Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei disappeared into an alternate reality after defeating Nick's movie. Before we start, please go support BlackRedZX for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Hyoudou Issei, after his great fight against the goddess of the night Nyx along with his partner Ddraig Goch, were celebrating while both clashing their two fists, but just when they were going to help their friends to defeat the remaining demons, out of nowhere a Grim Reaper appeared in front of Issei and him, Celestial Dragon Ddraig, who were going to prepare to attack, but before they did, the Grim Reaper activated a sphere that he threw towards Issei, who, just like Ddraig, did not worry so much about that, but in that instant the sphere exploded out of nowhere, causing a huge explosion that left the entire place destroyed. But luckily the members of the Gremory Group were safe, as well as those of the Hyoudou Group, but that was not the case for King Hyoudou Issei, who along with Ddraig had disappeared from the place without a trace, or that was what his companions thought when they could not find him. But in another place Issei was waking up, but to Issei's surprise he was right in the place where he had been killed by Raynare, which did not worry Issei, but what he did not know was that he was no longer in the world he knew, but it was in another, and with the passage of time he would realize that he had arrived in an alternate world to his own. Prologue. Hyoudou Issei at this moment was carrying an exaggerated amount of energy, and next to him was the Celestial Dragon Ddraig Goch, just like when he was alive, while he inflated his stomach to shoot a large amount of flames at the girl in front of them, who was more than surprised. This girl was the goddess of the night Nyx, who was about to be defeated by the two. Nyx, this is if I receive that attack I will be completely eliminated, he said, trying to flee when he realized the danger of Issei and Ddraig's attack, which released a gigantic dragon flame that made the goddess Nyx lose her concentration, and it was at that moment that Issei released an incredible amount of aura at the same time that the sound of D infinity DD infinity DD infinity DD infinity DD infinity DD infinity DD infinity D, which made the goddess more than surprised as she saw the great attack that was directed at her at the same time that she heard Infinity Blaster. It was heard as Ddraig increased his abdomen and launched a huge gigantic blaze of flames at the goddess Nyx, as Ddraig said, "Ddraig, take this, you pathetic beings who think you are gods." Welsh Dragon Flare. An incredible amount of aura was launched from Issei's cannons and a gigantic flame from Ddraig's mouth which hit Nyx, causing the sky of the island, not in the entire space of the place, to hear a great explosion and attack of the combination of Ddraig and Issei, which was more than enough to cover the entire place with a crimson color at the same time that Nyx received the two attacks fully, while saying more than surprised, "Nyx, so this is the great power of the Sekiryudai." She screamed more than surprised before being hit by both attacks, which caused a large explosion for a few moments before it stopped, while the goddess Nyx fell from the air to the ground of the island without moving, implying that she was unconscious, so Issei could only sigh as he turned to see Ddraig and asked with doubt, "Issei, what was that about Welsh Dragon Flares?" he asked as he looked doubtfully at Ddraig, who was flying beside him, who responded with a laugh. "Ddraig, well, I learned that from you, partner. For some reason, when I say the name of the skill, I feel that it is more powerful," he said, as Issei was surprised to hear that, as he had to admit that shouting the name of the technique just as he attacked made him feel stronger, as they saw the unconscious Nyx on the ground, so they both clashed their fists as they said, "Issei, good. Ddraig, we are the strongest." They both shouted while Rias yelled at them when she saw that they were still distracted with something else. "Rias, you two still have many demons left to defeat," I scream, as Issei and Ddraig realized that there were still the demons that Nyx had summoned, so they were going to go help, but then a Grim Reaper appeared out of nowhere in front of the two, which left both of them somewhat surprised, since upon feeling the power of the Grim Reaper they realized that it was a low-class Grim Reaper. "Issei, and what do you want? Are you here from Hades?" "Grim Reaper, correct. Hades-sama gave me one order to make the Sekiryudai disappear," he said seriously, while Issei and Ddraig were surprised before they looked at each other and laughed, since they didn't believe that Grim Reaper could even cause them harm. "Issei, I don't know what Hades is planning, but tell him that if he puts all my friends and family in danger I will eliminate him." "Grim Reaper, HMP Hades-sama knows, that's why I sent this to you," he shouted as he threw a small black sphere upwards, which caught Issei's attention along with Ddraig's, but seeing that it was just a common sphere they ignored it as they both charged towards the Grim Reaper. But before they could advance any further the sphere shone, and out of nowhere the two were trapped in a large transparent sphere unable to move, which caught everyone's attention at the same time as the Grim Reaper laughed. Issei, I can't move. Ddraig, me either. What the heck is this that is capable of stopping us with our current strength? Grim Reaper, ha ha ha, underestimating me was your biggest mistake, now just get lost. He screamed as he quickly left the place while the sphere very quickly went from a light color to a yellow color, which surprised everyone, while Vasco Estrada said loudly, Vasco, everybody quickly take cover, that's going to explode. He shouted, surprising everyone who quickly backed away. But in doing so they noticed Issei and Ddraig, who were inside the sphere, unable to move, which worried all the girls. Issei. She screamed when she saw the situation of the brown-haired girl while she was going to advance towards where he was like the others, but before they did the sphere turned completely white as it began to grow, which forced everyone to back away, and not a second passed when the sphere exploded, which left everyone surprised to see the huge explosion. And not only that, out of nowhere the explosion compressed until it disappeared without a trace, which left everyone surprised before everyone rushed to the place where the brown-haired boy was supposed to be, but to their surprise he was not there, since the only thing in the center was a small box which contained Issei's evil pièces, which left everyone speechless. While in another place, a sunset could be seen covering the city of Ko, while in the city park next to one of the fountains out of nowhere a small sphere appeared that dropped an unconscious brown-haired boy, or seemed to be, since out of nowhere he opened his eyes more than surprised before suddenly getting up while looking around more than surprised, but calmed down when he recognized the place. Issei, so I'm in Ko, but how did I get here? Ddraig, no idea, since after that light blinded us we lost consciousness, he said as Issei looked around confused as to why he was there, before sighing as he stood up and then went to his house, since the girls might come there to look for him. So he was hurt, since the sun was about to set, so he was somewhat worried since he didn't know if he had been missing for some time, so he had a great concern. So he hurried as night fell on the city, which made Issei frown as he could feel a strange sensation that wasn't there before, so he became alert. But as I turned a corner he collided with a girl, which made Issei almost fall to the ground from the girl's force, which surprised him, so he apologized. Issei, sorry, it wasn't he said as he tried to apologize for the crash, but stopped halfway when he heard the surprised scream of the girl, who said something that Issei did not expect. Oh, Onisama? The girl screamed when she saw Issei, who was surprised to hear a girl call him Onisama, so he looked at the girl, surprised to see her better, since the girl had long brown hair that reached her waist, and a pair of honey eyes like her, as well as having a very seductive body, since it was very similar to Irina's nose. She had more breasts than Irina and had beautiful legs like Rias's, which left Issei in a complete loss when he noticed that the girl looked like him, not to mention that she was wearing her school uniform. But before Issei asked her the reason why she called him, another voice appeared. Isara-san, why did you shout? Said a blonde with green eyes that Issei instantly recognized as Asia, who looked at the girl in front of Issei, who was more than bewildered since Asia seemed to know the girl, but he didn't. But before he asked her, Asia's gaze fell on him, and when she did, Issei was surprised, since Asia looked at him for a second before putting on a face of great surprise before putting on one of terror that left him more than surprised. Asia, to Issei-san? She screamed as she stepped back, which left Issei surprised as she was going to say something, but she moved instantly, dodging an axe kick from the girl in front of him, who broke the ground with her foot. Isara, you're a bastard, what are you doing here? The girl that Asia had called Isara before screamed, which had Issei more than in shock, since he couldn't even understand what was happening at the moment. But before he did anything he moved, dodging a sphere of power, and when he saw what was thrown at him he was more than in shock, while the boy asked seriously, "Are you okay?" "Asia, Diodora-san, I'm glad you came," she said while hugging him, which left Issei surprised, since he could not understand why Diodora Astaroth was alive, and why Asia was not even the slightest bit afraid of him, but had great affection for him, so he could only say one thing. "Issei, what's going on?" Chapter 1. Issei looked at everything more than confused since first Diodora Astaroth was alive when he should have been dead. Second, Asia was not afraid of Diodora but seemed to be fond of him. Third, the girl named Isara had called him Oni-sama, which surprised him since he did not have any sister besides the fact that she seemed to hate him, and the most important part that Issei was wondering at the moment. Issei, why is Asia looking at me in terror? Issei wondered as seeing Asia's reaction to him, leaving him more than surprised while Diodora hugged Asia while caressing her head. Diodora, don't worry, I promised you I would take care of you, right? He said with a smile as he gently stroked Asia's head, who just nodded as she snuggled into Diodora's chest, which made a pain appear in Issei's heart as Diodora looked at him angrily. Diodora, you really have the courage to come here, Issei. You know that as soon as the leaders find out they will come for you. Issei, you mean Sensei Michael and Serzex? He asked, surprised since they were sealed together with the Trihexa, but Isara became furious upon hearing that. Isara, you dare call him Sensei after you ripped off his arm? She screamed as Issei's surprise only increased as he couldn't even understand what was happening, so he needed answers and knew who could give them to him, so he just extended his hand to Asia, who was only surprised to see that. Issei, Asia, you eat. He said seriously as an idea had appeared in his mind out of nowhere, which was that Hades had to do with all this, although he didn't know why the damn Diodora was alive or why that girl looked like him, or why she called him Oni-sama. Besides, there was the possibility that Asia was in a manipulated state. So he wasn't going to stop until he found an answer. Isara, damn you, so you're here for Asia. If you think we're going to let you take her, you're more than wrong. I screamed as the girl's rage only increased while Asia's face only showed fear, knowing that she was Issei's target, while Diodora became serious. Ddraig, partner, I know you won't like this, but it would be better if we left for the moment, since the way things are going, this is the only way to get an answer. He said seriously, so Issei could only sigh since Ddraig was right, and the way things were going he wasn't going to get an answer, so it would be best to leave. Diodora, just like Isara-san said, we won't let you take Asia away. Issei, we'll see. Issei said seriously as he forcefully hit the ground, raising a curtain of smoke that shielded the three, and by the time the smoke had dissipated, Issei was gone. Isara, Tisk, why did I come back? Diodora, I don't know, maybe he hasn't fully recovered yet, and that's the reason why he wants Asia. But whether that's the reason or not, we have to warn the others about this. He said as Isara just sighed as she left with Diodora without noticing Issei, who was in the air floating with his dragon wings. Issei, what the hell is going on? The way things are going, my doubts will never be answered, they are only increasing. He thought as he followed the three of them to a place that Issei recognized as the occult club, so Issei flew faster. Ddraig, partner, it would be best if you hide your appearance, since only then will we be able to get some answers about what is happening. Issei, you're right, but how do I change it? Do I dye my hair or what? Ddraig, there is still that device that Azazel made for you once which changed your appearance. Issei, yes, it is true. He said as he put his hands in his pockets looking for something until he pulled out a silver necklace with a green gem in the middle, which he put around his neck while putting magic power into the necklace, which activated the necklace while a weak light covered it, and when the light went out, Issei had another appearance, which had nothing in common with its original appearance, and this was the second time Issei used that necklace. The first time he used it was when Azazel gave it to him before he unlocked the balance breaker to help him defend himself better, since the necklace increased his current physical strength by 10 levels, as well as his magical powers in addition to having a strength similar to the balance breaker. But when using the necklace he could also not use the boosted gear, since if he activated it, Issei would return to his original form. Issei, who would have thought that this would be useful to me at this moment? Ddraig, true, since after Azazel gave it to you a short time after you unlocked the balance breaker, currently your strength is 10 times higher than when you used the normal balance breaker. He said as Issei acknowledged 10 times louder than the ordinary balance breaker, who would say that Azazel would give him something quite useful, so without wasting any more time he flew to the club, since Asia and the other two should have already arrived, so he landed not too far away and hid his presence as best he could, which made him feel strange since it seemed as if he was an infiltrator in his own home. Issei, And to think that I would have to infiltrate this place. He thought as he looked out one of the club's windows, which was half open, where he could see Rias sitting at her desk reading some pages. Issei Rias. He thought longingly as he saw the love of his life as his gaze swept across the club where he saw everyone else without any of his friends and girlfriends missing from the place. But there were some things that surprised Issei. First, there was something that shouldn't be happening. Issei. Since when does Zenobia have long hair? On the other hand, it's weird to see Gasper dressing like a boy, but the most important thing is, why is Aquino pampering Valley? He screamed in his mind as he watched Aquino feed Valley, who had a smile when Aquino gave him a piece of food, which made Issei upset. There was also something else he was surprised about, and that was why Aquino, Irina, Kaneko, Xanaxia, Kuroka, Ravel, and Rossways were now fighting for Vala's attention, which made Issei look down sadly. Issei. Did I disappear for so long that almost all the girls changed me for Vala? Did they really betray me? He thought sadly as Ddraig remained silent for a few seconds as Issei was suffering. But if there was one thing Ddraig was sure of, it was that the girls in love with Issei would never betray him, so all of this could be the work of someone else who was trying to hurt Issei for what he said. Ddraig. Are you an idiot? Of course the girls would never betray you. All this is the work of something else. Besides, if you notice, there are several things that do not fit with what you know. Besides, why would they fall in love with Vala? When you did everything for them. On the other hand, there is something else that seems strange to me. He said seriously, surprising Issei, who realized that Ddraig was right. There was something strange in all this, so he was not going to stop until he discovered it. Issei. You're right. And what do you find strangest? Ddraig. That the power that can be felt from Vala cannot be compared to the one we know. Issei. It's true, this Vala is weaker than the one I know. His power is like the first time I met him. He told Ddraig, surprised since Issei knew that his current strength was not very different from Vala. It could be said that they could fight on par if the two put on their maximum armor, but the one in the club was one who did not have much resemblance to the Vala he knew. Issei. This couldn't get any weirder. He thought before realizing that Razor was also in the club, who was looking at Rias with a smile of love and affection. Issei. Okay, if Razor tries to do anything to Rias, I'll hit him so hard that I'll take away that smile you have. He thought, more than annoyed as well as surprised, since when did Razor look at Rias like that? On the other hand, since when did Razor smile without arrogance? Issei. There's no doubt that something very strange is happening. He thought seriously before Issei opened his eyes, more than surprised when he felt an energy, so he turned back while looking into the distance. Issei. This energy is Raynare? He thought in surprise before going to where he could feel Raynare's power as Asia, Diodora, and the girl called Isara left and entered the club where everyone was talking calmly. Rossways. If I had known that Vala would win the bet, I would not have bet. Ravel. Sigh, I think the same. Irina. Do we really have to pamper you for the rest of the night? Vala. If after all I win the bet. Aquino. Era, really, Vala, I'm asking for something that we're all participating in. Zenobia. Correct, although it is somewhat annoying to have to pamper him. Kuroka. I think the same, Naya. Kaneko. This is annoying since we have pampered him since morning. Rias. For that reason I didn't bet, since I didn't want to be undermining Vala, since I knew he would ask for that. She said with a smile, while the girls sighed upon hearing what Rias said, who was writing at the same time that Aquino got up from the couch while carrying a tray with plates of food to the other side of the room just when the door came out of nowhere opened, drawing everyone's attention as they turned to see those who entered, while Rias smiled and asked. Rias, they took a while, and how did the contract go for them? Isara, we didn't complete it. He said as everyone turned around somewhat surprised, since it was new that Isara and Asia would not complete their contract, in addition to the surprise of seeing Diodora accompanying them. Aquino, Era, and why is that? Asia, why we meet. Rias, with? She said confusedly, while everyone still had bewildered expressions, while Diodora sighed before saying seriously. Diodora, Issei was here. He said as a great surprise appeared out of nowhere in everyone. Rias broke the tip of the pencil where she was writing. Aquino had dropped the tray where she carried food to the floor, while Zenobia and Irina showed faces of fear upon hearing that name, while Rossways took the necklace that was hanging on her neck with great sadness, in addition to Kuroka only lowered her gaze with sadness at the same time that in Kaniko's eyes out of nowhere tears appeared, while Ravel only lowered her gaze in a fearful way while she squeezed her skirt, but in Riser and Vala there was only seriousness upon hearing that name. Vala, were you here? Diodora, yes, and it seems that he has already more than recovered from his injuries. Isara, or so it seems since their goal was. He said, looking at Asia sadly, who only had a sad face where it seemed that at any moment she was going to cry. Rias, why did you have to come back? He said as he put his hand on his face while clenching his teeth with great force, while Aquino just looked away with some anger mixed with sadness. Valley, if he was here, we better let the leaders know. Razor, I'll let them know. He said seriously as he left in a magic circle, while with the brown-haired boy he flew through the city of Quest, seriously looking at the surroundings until he saw a person walking through the deserted streets, which Issei recognized. Issei, that's one of Raynare's companions. His name was Dinasek if I remember correctly, but how is that bastard alive? He said, annoyed, looking at him before the memories of those days passed through his mind, which made him furious, so he descended behind him, which alerted him. Danasek, are you the one I was supposed to meet? He asked calmly, which made Issei smile as it seemed that Danasek was waiting for someone. Too bad they wouldn't meet. Issei, I'm not here to kill you for everything you've done. He said, remembering the moment when Asia died in his arms by Raynare. Middlet and Calwarner may have been weak at that time, but now he was not, so now they would kill Danasek without hesitation. Danasek, huh? You infiltrated the city? That's impossible. The barrier is supposed to keep anyone who isn't part of the alliance from entering. He said, stepping back, but Issei did not pay attention to Danasek's words while Ascalon appeared in his hand, which was covered in sacred light, surprising Danasek beyond measure when he saw it. Danasek, impossible, that sword! He screamed before being pierced by the Ascalon sword, where it disintegrated after being cut, as he was unable to dodge it, while Issei just thought. Issei, I don't know why you were alive, or why Diodora is too, or why the girls pampered Vala, but I'm going to get to the end of all this and I'm going to kill the culprit. He said seriously as Ascalon disappeared before Issei opened his eyes in surprise as his gaze went in the direction of the school in surprise. Issei, is this a barrier? Ddraig, partner, I can feel that inside the barrier there is a large amount of power colliding against each other, in other words. Issei, there's a fight going on inside, so the girls are in danger. He said, taking out his wings and then going to the school as quickly as he could, since something told him that all his doubts would be resolved once he arrived, and to his surprise the barrier was about to finish forming, so he entered before it closed while hiding before carefully advancing, since Issei could hear a large number of exhibitions selling in front. Issei, I hope it's not too late, he thought as he arrived at the place of the explosions, being surprised to see that the girls were fighting with a group of magicians which Issei had already recognized, since they had the same clothes as the magicians who had attacked them at the meeting of the factions, but what surprised him the most was seeing Zenobia, Irina, and Kiba fighting against a girl he recognized, which left him in shock. Issei, Aika? He thought, surprised as he saw how Aika fought on par against Zenobia and Irina using two swords similar to Durandal, only these were a little smaller. And not far away Kuroka fought against Middlet, which surprised Issei since Middlet had 8 fallen angel wings on her back, and near her Rossways, and Kaniko fought against Calwarner, who had the same number of wings as Middlet, but then a large explosion appeared in the sky, so Issei looked up to see Diodora and Aquino facing someone who, like several, should be dead. Issei, Kateria Leviathan? He mentally screamed when he saw Kateria Leviathan alive, who had a smile on her face while her fight against the two continued. At that point, Issei's gaze fell on a crimson hair that he recognized, but when he saw who he was facing, he was surprised. Issei, Raynare, he thought before feeling some fear in the bottom of his heart, before that fear turned into great rage at the sight of her, but something that left him surprised was that Raynare had 10 fallen angel wings before something crashed near Issei, so he looked at it only to see Vala with her balance breaker activated, so he looked up to the sky in surprise before going into shock. Issei, Krom Kruch? I screamed in disbelief as the dragon was floating in the air very calmly as he looked at Vala, who launched himself against him again. Issei, what the hell is happening here? He screamed in his mind, not being able to understand what was happening now, since he didn't understand why Aika was in a fight against Zenobia, Irina and Kiba, or why Kateria Leviathan was alive when she was killed by Azazel before, or why Caliwarn or Middle were stronger than he could remember, also why Raynare had a strength equal to Azazel's. But it was at that Issei noticed something, and it was that all his friends were trying to cross to the other side, being blocked, so he looked in that direction, seeing Asia and Ravel, who only had fearful looks on their faces, so he looked at what they were looking at, only to see that girl who had called him Oni-sama before. Issei. If I remember correctly, her name was Isara. He thought as he saw the girl, who was breathing heavily and had her uniform turned somewhat while she had a serious look, the same one she had when she tried to hit him, which surprised him, so he looked at where Isara was looking so seriously, but he could only see a large column of smoke. Issei. I can feel a great power coming from there, but I can't place it well because of the transformation. He thought before a shadow from nowhere began to be distinguished within the column of smoke, which only walked calmly while a calm voice was heard. Ha ha ha, you guys are really getting stronger than before, but it's a shame that we still surpass you, he said arrogantly, while Issei was surprised to hear the boy's voice, which came out revealing himself to everyone, and Issei, upon seeing him, was in complete shock at seeing the boy's appearance. Issei, impossible, he thought, not daring to believe what his eyes were seeing right now. Even Ddraig also refused to believe his own eyes when he saw the boy's appearance, while Issei said weakly, Issei, it's me. Chapter 2. The Gremory Group could be seen gathered in the VIP room of the Hyoudou mansion with worried faces, since ever since the battle against the goddess of the night Nyx ended, everyone was more than worried, since during that Hyoudou Issei had disappeared after the explosion, disappearing without a trace, which left all the girls worried. Especially a purple-haired girl, since it was because of her that Issei had faced Nyx, which is why he felt great guilt at the moment. Rias, still no news? He anxiously asked a blue-haired woman with a more than seductive body who possessed great strength, since that woman was Tiamat, the strongest dragon queen of the 5 dragon kings, who answered. Tiamat, no, Akuja must remain at the scene of the battle analyzing what remains. Akino, but that was 3 days ago, we haven't heard anything since then, she said worriedly, while everyone was the same. After all, it was Issei they were talking about, that boy who gave his all for them even if he had to bet his life on it. Inglived, I'm sorry if it weren't for my Issei-san. Asia, calm down, Inglived-san, this is not your fault. Sooner or later the goddess Nyx was going to attack us. Tiamat, that's correct, so saying it's your fault is stupid, he said seriously, while Inglived was surprised for just a few seconds before nodding at what Asia and Tiamat said, while the others just sighed as they continued to wait for news from Chestnut before a magic circle appeared in the middle of the room, which caught everyone's attention as the figure of Akuja Beelzebub appeared, who was very calm while all the girls looked at him impatiently. Rias, so what did you discover? Akuja, Sai, certainly what we suspected was correct, someone else was with Issei-kun at that time, he said seriously, which made everyone become serious, since they, being fighting against the demons that the goddess Nyx had called, had not noticed Issei's situation until they saw that he was sealed inside the transparent sphere. Akino, who? Who was with Issei-kun at that time? Akuja, Sai, that's the problem, we don't know, since the explosion erased the traces of the other person or being that was in front of Issei-kun at that time, he said as the girls became sad, since that meant they couldn't find the culprit of everything. Of course Akuja had already expected that reaction from what he said. Akuja, or so I should say, but not long ago we discovered something. Rias, what thing? Akuja, although it won't take us to the person responsible for this, at least it will be able to calm them down. Whatever it was, that huge explosion wasn't one that was designed to kill, but rather to transport us, he said, surprising the girls, who looked at each other in surprise, since that meant that Issei was still alive, so they could calm down a little. Akuja, although it is little, at least we know that Issei-kun is still alive, so don't worry. In addition, there is something that seems suspicious to me, but now is not the time for that. Listen, soon there will be a notice that Issei-kun will not participate in the Azazel tournament. Kiba, but if that is said, won't suspicions be raised? Akuja, yes, but for that we would say that Issei-kun was assigned a mission that only he could complete, and that for the moment it will not be known when he will return, since if it is spread that the hero of the underworld disappeared it will cause great chaos, so they must be discreet, understand? All hi. Akuja. Well, we will continue looking for some clue, try to act as normal as you can, we do not want anyone to suspect. He said before disappearing, leaving all the girls whose side, since although they did not know where Issei was, at least they knew he was alive, which was a relief for them, so it did not matter that they were going to wait for some news from Issei. Elsewhere. Note, so that they are not confused with the Issei, the one written in bold will be the dimensional Issei and the one that is not the canon. Issei looked on in disbelief at what was unfolding before his eyes, as that was something he had never thought of as a possibility, as he would never think that there was another person exactly like him in this place. Issei. What the buck? How is it possible that there is someone who looks exactly like me? Couldn't he be my twin brother? He thought in surprise as he saw the boy who looked like him, as he had an arrogant smile on his face which only increased when he saw Isara's hatred, which Issei had already noticed. Isara, you're a bastard. After everything you've done, you still dare to come back to this place. She shouted furiously as there were several tears in her eyes, while the Issei in front of her smiled more upon hearing her before laughing loudly. Issei, ha 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 ha, and why don't you refresh my memory, Isara-chan? Since that attack a few months ago left me somewhat distracted, so I can't remember well. He said arrogantly, while Issei was surprised to see that this boy who looked like him was quite arrogant, but Issei had never expected the following. Isara, and you still dare to tell me to remind you of that? You really are a bastard. Issei, ha ha ha, come on Isara-chan, it's not for you to get like that, or is it that you still haven't forgiven me for killing your best friend? He said mockingly, leaving Issei speechless upon hearing it, while Isara tensed upon hearing it before she gritted her teeth in frustration as she remembered that in her mind. Isara, of course not. How do you think I'm going to forgive you for killing and raping my best friend Serafal? She shouted furiously, but with a voice full of sadness, as tears fell from her eyes, while the others upon hearing that stopped their fighting. Those of the Gremory Group only made faces of sadness and hatred upon hearing it, while the girls on the other side laughed upon seeing that. Issei, ha 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 ha, it's true, I still remember her screams of pain when I raped and tortured her. After all, you can't always enjoy the body of the mouse Serafal Leviathan, which no longer exists. He shouted in mockery as Isara became more furious upon hearing this, but still did not attack Issei, which did not surprise anyone except Issei, who still did not understand what was happening, or why that boy who looked like him would say that. Issei, ha 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 ha, it's really fun talking to you Isara-chan, but I'm surprised you're not attacking me or waiting. You can't because of this. He said as he lifted something with his left hand, which left Issei speechless, as that boy's hand was holding Gasper from the neck, which was full of wounds. Isara, you're a bucking bastard, give us Gasper back. She screamed furiously as she looked at her little Kohai, who seemed like he was going to die at any moment, while Issei smiled upon hearing it. Issei, oh okay, I'll give it back to you. He said as he threw Gasper towards Isara, who unconsciously got a little closer to catch Gasper, but before she did, a sphere of power hit him, causing a small explosion that left everyone without exception in shock, even Issei, who looked on in disbelief before the sound of something falling to the ground was heard, so everyone lowered their eyes only to see a piece of bishop on the ground. Issei, ha 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 ha, you should see their faces, they look pathetic. He shouted mockingly as everyone was speechless, but out of nowhere a golden glow appeared that hit Issei, crashing him into the school building, surprising everyone before Issei emerged from the laughing rubble. Issei, ha 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 ha, I was already expecting that blow, but I didn't expect it to be that strong, although it was to be expected since now you have the Regulus Nemia, right? Rias. He said as he looked at the redhead who was wearing gold-colored armor, which surprised Issei when he saw her, since he was now unable to even understand what was happening, while Rias fell to her knees in front of the bishop who was on the ground. Estuaries, Gasper. Issei, tsk, regretting the death of Gasper, what a fool that boy was, he was just useless. He said seriously as he raised his hand towards Rias, who stood on guard, but then someone appeared behind her with a spear of light in his hand. Raynare, don't get distracted. Rias, damn. he said before moving to dodge Raynare's attack while Issei continued to point his hand at Rias before he moved his head a little dodging a black-colored sword. Issei, oh, so now you're going to fight for real? He said looking at Isara, who was being surrounded by a black aura while a black dog appeared next to her which was growing. Isara, I don't care if you're my brother or the only family I have left, I'm going to kill you. Issei, oh, this got interesting. Although I had already forgotten that of the Hyoudou there are only you and I left after all. I killed father and mother in front of your eyes. He said seriously while Isara became furious upon hearing it, but what she didn't know was that Issei had also heard those words, so he was stunned. Were his parents dead? Issei, you should have seen mother's terrified face, she looked really pathetic. I screamed as Isara's anger only increased, but with Issei it was not the same, but he was breathing rapidly. Ddraig, partner, you have to control yourself. If you continue like that, you'll activate the boosted gear. Ddraig shouted worriedly as all of Issei's feelings were about to explode since he did not understand what was happening, but he had received more than one surprise one after another. First, Amao Serafal had died at the hands of someone similar to him, and out of nowhere he had seen his Kohai die without preventing it. Now he had received another surprise, a bigger one, but Ddraig could never anticipate what was next. Issei, and to think that we were going to have another brother, it's a shame that he was never born. He shouted mockingly as Issei's eyes shrank to their maximum before all his emotions in that instant exploded. Issei, I'm going to kill that son of a hitch! He screamed out of his mind as a great torrent of power exploded towards the barrier, which left everyone more than surprised since no one had expected that, so everyone without exception looked at the column of power that rose into the sky before a roar was heard within the column of power as the effect of the collar was deactivated. Issei, but what? He said, surprised as he felt the power coming from the column, as it was impossible for him to see who was in the center like the others before everyone heard a voice coming from the column of power. Ddraig, Welsh Dragon Balance Breaker. Ddraig shouted as the armor, without holding back, covered Issei's body, causing the column of power that covered him to disappear without a trace, revealing Issei using the balance breaker to his fullest splendor, which left everyone without exception surprised to see him. Valid this is? He said, surprised when he saw Issei's armor, as he could feel a pain in his back which he had only felt before, but that had not ended yet as all of Issei's emotions had exploded. So Issei's power was increasing without stopping, which left everyone present speechless upon seeing such an explosion of power while it was heard. Issei. Who is about to wake up? I am the Red Dragon Emperor who has discarded the principles of domination. I will walk the path of justice with infinite hopes and dreams. I will become the Crimson Dragon King. And I promise you all I will show you the future that shines in true crimson light. Issei chanted, surprising everyone present, while Ddraig was somewhat surprised since now Issei does not need to do the chant to be able to enter Cardinal Crimson Promotion, so he was surprised to see that Issei had done the chant. Ddraig, Cardinal Crimson Promotion. Ddraig shouted as a light from nowhere surrounded Issei, which left everyone present speechless except for the brown-haired boy who was watching everything. Issei, what kind of power is this? He thought, more than surprised before the light disappeared, revealing a crimson armor that left everyone present in shock. So much so that no one knew how they should react upon seeing that, but that was not the case for Issei, who had a more serious look since the power he could feel from the armor was one he seemed to have been familiar with. So he asked coldly. Issei, I'll ask you once who you are? Issei, I am the one who will send you to death personally. He shouted coldly, surprising without exception everyone present, while Issei charged out of nowhere towards Issei, who was still surprised by Issei's words as he heard. Ddraig, Starsonic Booster. Ddraig shouted as Issei without hesitation charged towards Issei, who was still surprised by what he received Issei's blow directly, which made him vomit a large amount of blood as he was thrown backwards crashing into the school gym. Raynare Issei. Raynare shouted in surprise at seeing that, like the other girls who were accompanying him. Even Crom Cruch was surprised to see that, so she looked at Issei as she prepared to attack him. Issei, if you know what's good for you, you won't attack me, Crom Cruch. He said coldly, surprising Crom Cruch a little, who was going to ignore Issei's threat, but before he did, out of nowhere he felt fear run down his spine as he recognized the aura. Crom Crouch. Impossible, this aura belongs to. He thought, surprised and scared to be able to recognize Issei's aura since he had been in contact with that aura once, but then a great explosion appeared inside the school gym while it was heard. Issei, damn wretch, I'm going to kill you now. He shouted furiously as a large dark aura with purple hints began to cover him out of nowhere before a faint light appeared out of nowhere in his left hand as his hair turned black. Which surprised everyone when they saw that, especially Raynare and the others, since that had worried them, while the Gremory Group became serious since they knew what that meant. Issei, I don't know who the buck you are, but I'm going to kill you. He screamed as his purple aura exploded out of nowhere around him, leaving everyone shocked. More when seeing that Issei had managed to transform into a dragon, but the most surprised was Issei since that was clearly the boosted gear, but if he were to compare it with his own there were many differences since Issei was more than sure that the one that was sealed inside the boosted gear of the boy who looked like him was not Ddraig, but that was something that didn't matter now. Issei, I want to see if you have the guts to do it. He said mockingly, that made Issei more than furious since he hated being made fun of, so his fury increased more. Issei, damn you, I'm gonna kill you now, Raynare. He roared angrily as he charged towards Issei, who remained calm as he pulled his hand back a little before Ddraig strongly left as Issei charged towards the dragon. Ddraig, solid impact booster. He screamed as the gauntlet on his right arm grew before it hit the dragon's head, stunning him strongly and sending him back, which left everyone surprised as a cloud of dust rose where Issei had fallen. Raynare, that guy repelled Issei with a single blow? She said, surprised, while everyone present thought the same except Issei, who knew perfectly well the reason for that. Issei, it seems that he is not at his maximum capacity. Ddraig, it seems that he must have several internal wounds that have not yet fully healed, so he cannot fight at his maximum power, which means that he will not be able to maintain that form for long. He said seriously as the cloud of dust dispersed, revealing Issei in his human form, surprising everyone except Issei, who continued with a serious look since he doubted that the boy would be defeated just because of that, in which he was not wrong. Issei, ha 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 ha, I see that you have great strength and that power is somehow very familiar to me. He said as he slowly rose from the ground under the gaze of everyone, who was shocked to see a line of blood coming out of his mouth and nose. Issei, I don't remember the last time I felt excited about a fight. You certainly have the qualifications to face me, don't you think the same? He said, smiling slyly, but what everyone noticed was that that question was not for them or Issei, but rather for the beings sealed in what seemed to be the boosted gear, and they were not wrong when a thick and cold voice was heard coming from this. They certainly have them. This fight will be very entertaining. I wonder how long they will last against us? Issei, I wonder the same thing, so why don't we go with the second transformation? As you wish. The voice said before the ground suddenly began to shake, which left everyone shocked as Issei became serious when he saw it. Issei, the real fight begins now. He screamed as his power exploded, causing most to retreat from the wave of power, while Issei's expression inside the helmet became more and more serious. Black Crimson Dragonar. The being sealed inside the black boosted gear shouted, surprising everyone upon hearing the name of Issei's current transformation, who now wore a totally unique armor that Issei had never seen before. But at the same time it made him more than serious. After all, the power he could feel coming from the armor was not weak at all. Issei, it seems that this will not be an easy fight to win. He said seriously while Issei laughed lightly before walking calmly until he was in front of Issei, who had done the same, standing in front of each other, which left everyone speechless. Dark against Crimson, the battle to see who was the strongest was about to begin. Chapter 3. Everyone watched more than in shock what was happening, since something they had never imagined was happening at this moment, since Issei was using one of his armors that was not weak at all compared to another that had a different design of crimson before red, leaving everyone speechless, which expelled a large amount of energy that did not lose at least against Issei, and in fact it seemed that it surpassed him. Akino, Rias, what the heck is going on now? Rias, I have no idea what's going on. But if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that a battle between two dragons is about to begin," he said, seeing how both looked at each other in their armor with a great amount of hostility which did not go unnoticed by anyone. Crom Cruch. Who would have thought that things would end up this way? Dark against crimson. I wonder who of the two will emerge victorious, he thought as he looked at the two boys, but his attention was more on Issei since the aura he gave off was one he never thought he would feel again in his life. Everyone was more than tense since the two released a large amount of power that made it difficult for them to stay calm before they both moved at the same time, hitting each other. Imagine the other Issei, which cracked the ground as if it were a spider web spreading for more than 100 meters, which forced everyone to fly in the sky, surprised to see such an attack, which did not stop there as both began to exchange blows quickly, which unleashed a great wave of energy that forced everyone without exception to retreat. After all, the attacks of both were not weak, but there was something that everyone noticed. Irina, the Crimson's blows are stronger. Each blow he gives is stronger than the previous one. On the other hand, Issei is not at the level of his blows. In fact, he cannot respond to all the attacks, he said seriously as he watched all the blows they both gave each other without any rest, while the other girls had more than worried expressions. Raynare. Damn, who is that? He's capable of fighting Issei with that transformation, but if this continues, Issei's injuries will get worse than they already are. I watched more than surprised but also worried, as she knew what would happen if this fight went on any longer. Before Issei landed a blow to Issei's stomach, which sent him back several meters from the blow while spitting out a large amount of blood which dripped from under his helmet while breathing heavily as he kneeled on one leg. Issei, shit, I didn't think my condition was going to cause me so many problems. You're certainly strong, he said seriously as he tried to get up, which cost him a bit, but to his surprise Issei had not stayed still but charged against him, hitting him in the chest where the armor broke into pieces while Issei was thrown backwards towards what was left of the school, as barely a part was still standing where Issei was impacted with great force, destroying what was left, leaving everyone surprised since until then Issei had had the advantage in the fight, which had not stopped in the slightest as he instantly charged a dragon shot and fired it without hesitation towards Issei, who received the entire attack without being able to defend himself from it, causing an explosion leaving everyone speechless. Raynare Issei. She screamed worriedly when she saw the attack while looking at Issei furiously before realizing something, so she turned to see the Gremory Group, which was distracted by Issei's attack, so she created a spear of light and threw it at Rias, who was surprised to see the attack coming towards her, as well as everyone else, since no one had expected a surprise attack from Raynare. Vala laughter. She screamed as she watched the spear head quickly towards her, as all the Gremory members knew that Rias could not maintain the Regulus Nemia for long, so her defense had dropped a lot since a few minutes ago, so if the spear hit her she would be seriously injured, she could even die. But to everyone's surprise a crimson glow appeared in front of Rias. Surprising her, it was Issei who raised his hand, where out of nowhere a ripple appeared and was heard. Ddraig, reflect, he said as the spear deflected to where the schoolyard was, which exploded as Issei turned to look at Rias, who no longer had the Regulus Nemia on, while Issei arranged a lock of her hair and gently caressed it. Issei, are you okay? He asked, surprising everyone as the way he caressed Rias's hair, and the way he asked was like a lover in love would do, which left everyone completely lost. Rias, why yes, she said, surprised to see that, as she felt a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt for a long time, which confused her, while Issei looked at Raynare and said seriously, Issei, I didn't have the chance to kill you before, but now that I have it, I won't waste it, he said seriously, surprising everyone to hear it more to Raynare before Issei turned on the thrusters on his back as he shot at Raynare, which surprised everyone as they could all feel the hatred in Issei's words as he grew his fist to hit Raynare. Ddraig, solid impact booster, Ddraig shouted as Issei put great force into the attack with the clear intention of killing, but just as he was going to hit her a black glow appeared in front of her, protecting her, which did not matter to Issei, who did not decide his attack but instead hit Issei with it, destroying almost all of the armor on his chest, surprising everyone since no one had expected it, especially Raynare, who upon seeing him couldn't help but try to go towards Issei, but before she did, Issei activated his cannons to begin charging a large amount of energy into them. Then he fired, hitting Issei squarely, surprising everyone as the power of the attack was great, but it was not enough to kill Issei, who slowly appeared in the smoke with his armor destroyed while a large amount of blood fell from his mouth, nose and forehead, which gave him a horrible appearance as there were more wounds on his body from which more blood came out, leaving everyone speechless. Issei vomits blood. Shit, I do look pathetic, I admit it. You are stronger than me. Right now I am no match for you, he said seriously as he fell to his knees on the ground as blood came out of his mouth, and the remains of the armor disappeared, revealing a completely injured state, which left everyone speechless. Issei, this is your end, he said seriously as he raised his left hand towards Issei, who just smiled when he saw him, but to everyone's surprise Issei suddenly lowered his arm, which bewildered all the presets when they saw him. Issei, aren't you going to kill me? Issei, of course I will. Don't think that I'm not just going to completely erase you from this world, he said coldly as Issei's chest opened up as out of nowhere a large amount of energy began to gather as a roar could be heard. Ddraig, boost 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 boost. Ddraig said as the energy continued to gather in the gym, which alerted everyone since just by seeing that they realized that this was a devastating attack that could completely eliminate anyone who received it, in addition to the fact that out of nowhere small red dragons came out of Issei's gems, which out of nowhere began to shine while saying the same thing as Ddraig, surprising everyone even more. Raynare, don't let him finish charging that power, she screamed as she charged towards Issei to try to stop him in his attack, which made the others finally react, so they charged to help Issei, who was more than surprised to see the power of Issei's attack, which was still charging the power of the Longinus Smasher, so he couldn't move. Rias, TSK, don't let them reach Crimson, stop them at all costs, he shouted as the roar of a lion was heard as once again the entire armor of the Regulus Nemia covered Rias, surprising his companions, who acknowledged and charged to stop the others who were going to face them before everyone realized something and turned to see Issei, who finished gathering all the energy. Ddraig, Longinus Smasher, instantly firing all the power he had gathered in the gym, causing everyone to be more than in shock at seeing the amount of power fired at Issei, who only watched as the ray of power headed towards him without being able to avoid it. So he received it fully without being able to do anything, while the lightning advanced forward without losing power while destroying the barrier without problems, surprising everyone since the barrier was a powerful one. So his surprise was great, especially when seeing that the one who received the attack had not been Issei but Crom Cruch, who was full of wounds from the attack while Issei was behind him on the ground unable to move, surprised. Issei, Crom what? Crom Cruch, it seems that attack was completely intended to kill you. Who would have thought that there is someone who has the ability to leave you in that state like me? He said before falling to the ground, leaving everyone speechless as Crom Cruch, the strongest evil dragon who was at the level of the celestial dragons, was on the ground with almost no strength, and with the little he had he looked at Issei while saying weakly, Crom Cruch, so a dragon slayer too, lol, it seems that the most feared dragon has returned. Ddraig Goch, the dragon of dragons, has finally returned, he said before falling unconscious, which left everyone in a great silence upon hearing that, since although Crom Cruch whispered almost everything he said, everyone had managed to hear it thanks to their developed senses, leaving them speechless while great terror appeared on their faces upon hearing it, while Issei was more than surprised to hear it, as it was Ddraig who unconsciously pointed to himself as if trying to receive confirmation of what he had just heard. Ddraig. Huh? Wait, what? Me? The Dragon of Dragons? Did you get the title wrong? Issei. I think the Longinus Smasher made me look like an idiot. Since when are you the Dragon of Dragons? After all, you are the Welsh Dragon of Domination, not the Dragon of Dragons, since an idiot like you would never get that title without offending, of course. Ddraig. No, I support you. In fact, I think his brain was mashed, that's why he said that nonsense. Me, the Dragon of Dragons? How mashed was his brain to say that? He mentally told Issei, who only approved at Ddraig's words while ignoring the state of the others after hearing the words Crom Cruch. Rossways. Did the Dragon of Dragons say Ddraig Goch? Kuroka, that seems so. Rias, but that's impossible. That dragon is just a myth, or not, Vala? they said as they looked at Vala, who had frozen upon hearing Cromcrutch's words, but the most affected was Albion, who did not stop shaking after hearing that name. Vala, I'm not sure, but the most important thing now is that the battle has just ended with Crimson victory, he said seriously as he looked at Issei standing in front of Issei, who had been more than surprised to have heard Cromcrutch's words for what he said. Issei, who would have thought? I lost against the Dragon of Dragons. That explains why he held back from the beginning. You didn't use your true strength, right? He said seriously as he raised his head slightly, trying to look at Issei, who didn't answer since that was true, he hadn't used all his strength. In fact, he didn't even think about using the Dragon Diablos since it wasn't necessary given his current power was more than enough to defeat his different version of him, but even so Issei fell to one knee on the ground while breathing heavily since using the power of the Longinus Smasher left him without energy, so he deactivated the Cardinal Crimson promotion since the battle was over, and whatever they were looking for they could no longer obtain it. Issei, right, I didn't use all my strength. If I had, killing you would be as easy as breathing. Issei, I see, then I will see her when I have recovered from my injuries, but now we are leaving, he said seriously as Issei was surprised to hear it before realizing something, so he looked up only to see how a staff was about to hit him in the face, so he received it full on since there was not enough time to dodge it, so Issei crashed into the occult club, surprising everyone. You're late, Biko. Biko, sorry I got lost somewhere. I never thought I'd see you in that state, but okay, let's go, he said seriously as the others came to his side as he spun his staff and struck it on the ground, where a portal appeared that began to absorb them. Issei, I'm going back, and when I do the Matar along with the Crimson, he said before disappearing along with the others, leaving only the boys, who sighed when they saw that Issei was gone. Diodora, are they okay? Ravel, if Asia and I are fine, he said calmly as Asia healed Isara, who just looked at the place where Issei had gone before remembering Issei. Isara, Crimson. Rias, we have to help him, he shouted as everyone went to see the place where Issei had fallen, but to their surprise he was no longer there. Rias, where is it? Far from Ko. A brown-haired boy could be seen sitting on the ground calmly, as he remained still in place since they had seen the alternate version of Issei leave. He left the place since he knew he couldn't stay, so he left and ended up in this place. Ddraig, how much longer are you going to be like this? Issei, the time it takes me to assimilate that I am no longer at home in my world since I am in an alternate one to mine, he said calmly with a sad smile as he now understood everything, why Diodora was alive and why he got along with Asia, why Vala was being pampered by almost all the girls, why Kateria was still spoiled as well as Raynare, Middlet and Calawerner, why Aika was bad, and most importantly why there was another like him. Issei, and to think that in this world I have a sister. Ddraig, in theory that girl is not your sister. After all, she had parents like yours, but they were not yours and they do not have a blood bond that unites them, since I could not feel any type of blood in her that resembles yours. Alternate world, remember? Everything is different here, she said, surprising Issei since he had not thought of it that way, so he sighed since the idea of finally having a sister made him happy, but it turned out that she was not. Issei, I see, then the Dragon of Dragons, right? Ddraig, I wonder what myself did here to be called that way, he said as Issei just laughed a little at Ddraig's words as he looked at the starry sky. Issei, an alternate world from mine. I wonder what things are different in this place. He smiled as he stood up from his spot to start walking, since now he had to stay in full motion. He had to know everything that had happened in that world, so he activated the collar once more while thinking. Issei, from now on I will no longer be able to be Hyoudou Issei. After all, he is a criminal in this world, so now I will be Shiva Tatsuya, the Crimson Demon, he said seriously as he slowly left the place, blending into the darkness in which he would move from now on. Chapter 4. Everyone looked around the place looking for their savior, so to speak, who had disappeared, so the boys sighed when they saw that he was no longer there. Rias, he asked me who I was. Aquino, true, his strength was not weak at all, the two women said while the others agreed, since they could not deny that the strength demonstrated by Crimson was not weak at all, but quite the opposite. Isara, she also said that she didn't use all her power, but she also mentioned that if she had used it, killing Issei would have been as easy as breathing. Rossways, not to mention that he is the dragon of dragons Ddraig Goch, he said, causing everyone to tense upon hearing him, since they all knew the story of that dragon, and why he had been called the Dragon of Dragons. But the one who was most affected was Albion. After all, he witnessed everything that happened at that moment. Kiba, whoever that boy is, it seems that somehow well. Valle, he seemed to be in love with you, Rias, or didn't you notice the tone in which he spoke to you, and also how he caressed your hair? He said seriously as he looked at the redhead, who was surprised. But she couldn't deny what Valle had said like the others, since they had all witnessed how he protected her, and how he spoke to her. Cerzex, who is in love with Rias? The mouse said out of nowhere, drawing everyone's attention upon seeing him, since he was not alone, as with him came Azazel, Michael, Grafia, and a silver-haired woman, who looked with a little surprise at Valle's wounds. Who would have thought that you would end up in that state? Valle, are you okay? Valle, yes I am, but can I ask, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be on bed rest because of your pregnancy? Cerzex, that's what I told her, but you know how Rise is, she won't listen to anyone. Azazel, certainly, although I can't help but wonder how strong the son of 2 super demons will be. Note, I clarify that Rizavim is a woman and is Cerzex's official wife, so Grafia is single. Surprise /v/. The leader of the fallen angels said, which only made Cerzex laugh nervously, while Rise just turned around blushing. Valle, leaving that aside, she didn't come, right? He said somewhat nervously, while Rise laughed lightly, as did Cerzex, who tensed Valle as that only confirmed his suspicions. At the same time, the voice came from behind him. Boy, you're such an idiot, Valle, not wanting to see me. The girl behind him said, making Valle tense as he slowly turned around, only to see a teenage girl looking at him seriously. Which made him tense when he saw her as he took 2 steps back from her, which didn't go unnoticed by anyone. They just laughed at the sight. Valle, the Valeria Sama, he said nervously, while the girl's gaze became serious, seeing the wounds of her younger brother, since she was older than Valle only by about 300 years. Valeria, TSK, are you really no match for Issei? Look how I left you, he said seriously as everyone's laughter disappeared at that name which had caused them so much harm, also remembering the reason why they had gathered. Cerzex, looks like they managed to get him to leave. Isara, it wasn't us, he said, drawing the attention of the 3 leaders, who looked at the boys who told what had been suspended about how Issei wanted to take Asia and Revel to heal their wounds, which they tried to prevent, but almost all of Issei's allies had come with him, which made it difficult to defend the 2 mentioned. Michael, that explains why he came to this place. Azazel, true, but explain, what did you mean when you said that you were not the ones who defeated him? Valle, that's because when he was about to take the 2, Isara managed to arrive and interfere along with Gasper, who fell under Issei's power, he said seriously, while the girls only became sad remembering that, like Rias, who couldn't help her servant. Isara, after he killed him, Rias hit him, and then I started arguing with him until he mentioned him as the murderer of my parents. Aquino, but at that moment something totally unexpected happened. Rise, unexpected? Isara, yes, because after I mentioned my little brother, who was never born, a tower of power shot out from that place, he said, pointing to the place where the column of power had formed out of nowhere, which caught the attention of the leaders. Azazel, who caused it? Valle, I'll put it bluntly, when the torrent disappeared it revealed this, he said seriously as a magic circle appeared out of nowhere revealing an image, which surprised the leaders when they saw it, but what caught their attention the most was the color of the armor, as it reminded them of a being they would like to forget. But Valle did not remain silent, as what followed surprised them more. Valle, and after that he sang a song, which changed his entire armor to another color, with great force as well, he said seriously as he changed to another image revealing the armor, which surprised the leaders even more, since that color reminded them of someone, so they unconsciously looked at Rias, who only looked away. Azazel, it's impressive I must say, but what was the chant he used? Valle, it was Jerry's. Who is about to wake up. I am the Red Dragon Emperor who has discarded the principles of domination. I will walk the path of justice with infinite hopes and dreams. I will become the Crimson Dragon King. And I promise you all I will show you the future that shines in true crimson light. Rias said out of nowhere, leaving Vala somewhat surprised, but the leaders weren't since that chant sounded a lot like one they knew. Valeria, that song. Cerzex, it looks like the one from Rise, that dragon. Azazel. I who must wake up. I am the heavenly dragon who stole the principle of domination from God. I mock the infinite and destroy fleeting dreams. I will become the red dragon god of domination. I will drag them into the depths of the crimson purgatory. Azazel said seriously, leaving the others surprised to hear that, since he had a great resemblance to the one that boy used. Azazel, it's practically the same, only it has modifications, which only means that someone found by chance the scred gear that contains the dragon of dragons Ddraig Goch. Rise, but how is that possible? That scred gear was sent to the dimensional gap to prevent anyone from using it. Cerzex, I don't know about that, but someone somehow managed to find the first scred gear that ever existed. He said seriously while the others were surprised to hear that boy possessed the first scred gear that existed. Rias, I have a doubt about what you just said. How did you defeat Ddraig, being that he was the first to defeat Great Red? He said with doubt, since it was not unknown to anyone that Ddraig, who was previously known as one of the two heavenly dragons, increased his strength to levels that were truly monstrous, so much so that he came to the power of Great Red, so they faced each other in a brutal fight, where Ddraig snatched the title of the Dragon of Dragons from Great Red, which he lost to Ddraig. Cerzex, the truth is that Draig's power was beyond our imagination. Azazel, also, what you know is partly a lie, since what really happened was that Great Red was defeated with 2 simple blows in which Ddraig didn't even try to use his power. He said seriously while all the boys were surprised to hear it. With just 2 simple blows, the previous Great Red Dragon of Dragons was defeated by Ddraig. Vala, it's a joke, right? Albion, it's not, since Draig's power was at a level I never thought I'd see in my life. He said out of nowhere, surprising the boys even more, since in Albion's voice you could hear how terrified he was to find out about Ddraig. Isara, so how did they defeat such a monster? Cerzex, that was because all of Samuel's poison was used, which led to his death, but Azazel, even with the poison Ddraig managed to survive, and not only was he still powerful to such an extent that all the mythologies united to defeat him. Michael, which led to the death of several gods. They said with regret when remembering that, which surprised all the boys, while they trembled. Was Ddraig Goch the dragon of domination that terrifying? Of course, the leaders were not surprised by the boys' fear, since even they feared him. Rise. But even with everyone's strength it was impossible to subdue Ddraig, so they all united their power into one to create an artifact that barely managed to seal Ddraig, or rather it was a miracle that it could be sealed. Michael, which made it the first scred gear ever to exist, one that wasn't in the heaven system. Azazel, the ultimate forbidden scred gear, which meant the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the one who uses it would have no rival, the Apocalypse boosted gear which has the power to annihilate everything that exists. They said, leaving everyone speechless, since they only knew that Ddraig defeated Great Red, but it was said that it was a fight of equals. But the truth was that Ddraig defeated Great Red effortlessly, so they wondered how terrifying was his strength. Even using all of Samuel's poison, which ceased to exist, that is why they were able to defeat him. Diodora, so Crimson has the power to subdue everyone. Rise, yes. Vala, then we are in luck. He said out of nowhere, drawing everyone's attention, as Vala's words made no sense at that moment. Valeria, if you don't give me a good reason why you said that, I'll leave you worse than you are, Vala. Do you understand? Vala, of course I know, and the reason why I said that is that Crimson seems to be or is in love with Rias. He said, surprising everyone upon hearing it, since that was something the boys had noticed, but the leaders were somewhat confused by what they were telling what had happened, which left them speechless. Valeria, who would have thought? It seems that Rias has a powerful suitor. Rise, I hate to say it, but it's true, Rias seems like you have someone powerful behind you. They said while Rias just got nervous hearing it, not knowing that they were wrong about Ddraig, since the Ddraig they knew was not the one that had appeared in front of them. SirZX, I don't like the way it looks, but if there is a way to control it we should use it. Azazel, I agree Rias, if by some fate you meet him again, try to gain his trust. They said, surprising Rias, who gritted her teeth in annoyance upon hearing it, since she hated that. Rias, do you want me to play with someone's feelings, like he played with mine? He said seriously while the four were surprised by the coldness of Rias's words. At the same time one of the silver-haired girls said, Graphia, Rias is right. Do they want her to play with someone's feelings? Knowing that she knows perfectly well how painful that is. She said seriously as the four leaders remembered what she and the other girls went through, making them feel like idiots for asking her that. SirZX, I'm sorry but now we have to find a way to stop it if it gets out of control. Azazel, with our current strength, we won't do anything to him unless… Rise, what? Wait Azazel, you're not thinking about Valeria, the fall of the dragon. He said seriously while everyone was surprised to hear it, especially Vala since as part dragon he knew what that meant, so he put on a serious face. Vala, really? Do you want him to suffer in the worst possible way? When it's thanks to him that we got out alive? Azazel, well, now we will consider any option, no matter how horrible it is, after all we must maintain peace. Michael, I hate to say it, but you're right, we'll consider any option. We already had enough problems with Issei, now we have to worry about another one. She said seriously, after all Issei had caused them one problem after another, so now they couldn't afford to be nice, which annoyed Rias who turned around which only made the leaders sigh as they saw a magic circle appear at Rias's feet which without turning around said, Rias, I'll just say that you are completely wrong, Crimson is not someone dangerous to all of us or to me. She said seriously as she left in the magic circle, which surprised everyone upon hearing it, since she was the only one who was sure about that after all she knew something the others didn't. Rias, Crimson is not a bad person, I'm sure of that, after all, his gaze. She thought as she remembered that when he saved her eyes she met, and although she couldn't see his eyes through the helmet, she could feel his gaze, in which there was a great longing as if she were his most precious treasure, which left her surprised since she would never forget what Crimson told her at that moment with his gaze. Something that only she could hear and understand. Crimson, don't worry, I'll protect you from everything, nothing and no one will be able to stop you, Rias. He remembered while looking towards the window of his room where he walked while looking at the sky where several stars could be seen, of which there were thousands. Rias, Crimson, why do I have this feeling that I know you? And that you are someone important to me to the point that when I saw your back about to face Issei I felt my heart ache as if I was afraid of losing you. Why? Who are you? And why do I feel something I shouldn't feel? She said as she put both of her hands on her chest, right on her heart, where she could feel a pain that confused her. Why did she feel it? Was it a feeling she hadn't known about until now? Since just remembering the fight made her heart hurt. Rias, Crimson, even though everyone sees you as a threat for me, you will always be my savior, and I only hope that we meet again. She said dreamily while being watched by a boy with deep orange hair who had a mask on, watching everything without knowing what to do or say. Meanwhile, in a distant place in a forest, a black-haired boy walked calmly until he stopped out of nowhere, and gently looked at the starry sky. Ddraig, are you okay? Issei, huh? If I am, it's just that out of nowhere I felt as if… Ddraig, would Rias like to see you? Issei, yes, but the best thing is that for the moment I should not be near her or the girls, not until I discover the difference in this world with mine. He said before turning to leave. He decided to find out everything that had happened in this world, the reason for several things, but more importantly to find out if there was a way to return to his world, and knowing without it, out of nowhere 3 months had passed in which many things happened, which gave Issei a reputation. In the underworld, Gregory, Heaven, Nordic or Yukai. Everyone heard the name of the Crimson Demon, which began to be feared by many, but the most important thing was that Issei discovered something that left him speechless, and he finally understood why his self in this world was an evil being. Chapter 5. A few weeks had passed since Issei's attack, who had not reappeared in that time, giving some peace to the boys who had already recovered from the attack that day. But still, since that day things had not been the same for the boys, especially for Rias, who still couldn't stop thinking about that day. Aquino, Rias. Rias, huh? What's wrong? Aquino, you've been so thoughtful that you didn't notice the others had already left. He said as Rias noticed that only her and Aquino were in the club room, which surprised her before she sighed while rubbing her temple. Rias, sorry, it's just that. Aquino, yes, I know. Rias, you can't stop thinking about Crimson, right? Rias, yes, for some reason I can't stop thinking about him, he's strange. Aquino, Rias, if I didn't know you I would say that you are in love. He said mockingly, causing Rias to blush, who just looked away ignoring what Aquino said, who just shook her head before remembering something. Aquino, it's true that recently there have been several rumors about Rias, the Crimson Demon? He said as Aquino confirmed as out of nowhere several rumors began to appear in all the factions, about a man who called himself that way who had attacked certain points of the underworld, which in a normal case would have been searched for and immediately killed, but it turned out that the Crimson Demon had only attacked demons from the old Mao faction as if preventing something, which prevented the underworld from looking for him since those from the old faction were currently wanted. Rias, more than a rumor, it seems to be a truth, even Oni-sama is aware of his movements. Aquino, why? Do you want to meet him? Or why, in addition to attacking those from the old faction, you also attacked the world of the dead? Rias, both, since the day she appeared she attacked those from the old faction and the fates of the god Hades for no reason, she killed them without leaving a trace. She said, surprised as she looked out the window, since no one wanted to make an enemy of the god Hades, but that being or person had killed many of her Grim Reapers, whether they were of the lower class or the upper class, even some of the supreme class had fallen before him. Rias, although it is not known why he does it, it has been said that he should be captured alive for interrogation, or else that's what Hades said, but in reality, as soon as he has the Crimson Demon in his hands, he will kill him. Aquino, true, but I found it somewhat strange that just when the Crimson Demon appeared a few weeks ago, Crimson disappeared without a trace. Rias, you're implying that Crimson Demon is actually Crimson, right? Aquino, yes, that is a possibility since both have the Crimson in their names and when one disappeared the other appeared. Rias, I doubt it a little because if that were the case there would have been no need to hide since he has the power to destroy everything. He said as he returned to his work without paying attention to Aquino's surprised face, who had been surprised to see how calm Rias was on the subject as if she knew that both of them were not the same person. Aquino, I see, changing the subject, what are you going to do about the engagement? Rias, I've already told my parents more than once that I'm not going to marry Razor, but they still maintain the commitment as the Phoenix. Aquino, it was to be expected after all. Razor loves you more than anything, although it is a shame that it will never be reciprocated. Rias, you're right, after all my heart isn't ready to love someone again. Aquino, right. They said before they fell into a rather unusual silence, as each one had lost herself in her memories of the boy they loved with great madness, emotion, to whom they gave almost everything of themselves without hesitation, only without knowing that they shouldn't have done that. Since what happened next left not only them, but the others in a horrible emotional state, since if it weren't for them having to stop him, they wouldn't have been able to recover. Elsewhere, in one of the many more remote places in the underworld, a shadow could be seen passing at great speed between the trees with great agility, until he stopped and looked at his surroundings with extreme caution, as if he were afraid of something that would attack him at that moment. The being had a golden-colored tunic that covered his entire body, while he held a scythe in his hands which seemed to be ready to attack at any moment, while on his face was a clown mask that would usually be intact, but now he had several cracks which was not normal, like it was constantly trembling in fear of something. This being was the Grim Reaper called Pluton, who trembled as he looked around, waiting or rather trying to anticipate an imminent attack. Pluto, why are you attacking me? Do you know well that your actions will bring many consequences? He screamed as he looked around before quickly moving to dodge a slash, causing his expression to turn grim. Seeing that the other person wasn't going to stop his attacks, a voice could be heard from the darkness. Consequences? What a joke, you didn't worry about that in the past, why should I? He screamed before attacking quickly, which angered Pluton even more, who moved quickly, blocking one of the person's attacks with his scythe, which showed cracks which worried Pluto. Pluto, if that's the case, then just die. He shouted furiously as he swung his scythe with great speed and force, which only cut through the air since the other person had dodged it without a problem, which frustrated Pluton when he saw it. Pluto, damn it, stop running and facing me. If that's what you want, go ahead, even if it will only speed up your death, he said seriously as he walked out of the darkness with a large sword in his hand, causing Pluton to only put on a furious face upon seeing him, while he stood on guard with his scythe and said seriously, Pluton, are you still not going to tell me why you always attack the fates? Crimson Demon. Crimson, well, let's say you did something you shouldn't have done, and now you're going to pay for it, he said seriously before attacking Pluton at high speed, who only moved his scythe to block the sword's attack, which released great pressure on Pluton, given the holy aura it released. Pluto, TSK, if it weren't for Ascalon you'd be dead already. Crimson, ha, what a joke, you're only alive because I'm still using Ascalon, he screamed before Ascalon 2 appeared in his other hand, leaving Pluton shocked before his scythe was split in half by Ascalon 2. Pluto, damn you. Crimson, disappear. He screamed before cutting Pluton into an X shape which slowly began to disintegrate, while Crimson just watched calmly. Pluto, Hades-sama, he will kill you. Crimson, let him try and I will return the favor he gave me, he said as he watched Pluton disappear, making him sigh slowly, while he put away the 2 Ascalons as he removed the mask from his face. As he turned his gaze to the sky of the underworld, before sighing regretfully as he sat down on the ground before lying down, before a light appeared covering him before it disappeared, still revealing brown-haired honey eyes that were still wearing Ko's uniform. Issei, who do you think that idiot Hades will send now? Ddraig, he will surely send a Grim Reaper even stronger than the Grim Reaper. Pluton will possibly send Thanatos or Orcus. Issei, I see, then he will surely send Orcus. After all, the Grim Reaper Thanatos is not like the one in my world. Ddraig, true, in this Thanatos is loyal to Hades, so sooner or later we will face him, he said before Issei sighed upon hearing it, since ever since his other self's attack, he had dedicated himself to destroying the future problem of Keiho's brigade before it arose. Issei, true, although one thing worries me. Ddraig, why are most of the gods dead? Issei, if most of the gods we met in my world are no longer in this one, it seems they died a long time ago. Ddraig, well, remember that we still don't know everything about this world, since we still don't know why you are evil in this world. Issei, it seems that the little that is known is that I betrayed all the facts, but the reason is still unknown. Ddraig, it is likely that only high-ranking beings know about it. Issei, in other words, I would have to ask Sirzex Azazel, or Michael about that, he said before sighing as he got up from the ground and activated the collar again, which made Ddraig ask something he already knew the answer to. Ddraig, are you going to see her? Issei, yes, after all I promised that I would take care of her, he said seriously before activating a magic circle that transported him to another part of the underworld. But unlike the previous forest they were in before, which was very gloomy, this one was greener and more beautiful. So Issei calmly began to walk while looking at his surroundings, which he recognized since he had come more than once in the last few weeks. But that was not something that made him entirely happy, but the further he went into the forest, the clearer the presence within which the brown-haired boy was familiar became, until a cabin appeared in his vision, to which he headed, but upon reaching the door where he sighed for a moment before entering, and head to the room where upon arriving I heard a voice. Welcome home, a woman said, whom Issei looked at before sighing at her appearance. The strongest queen was in front of him wearing her usual maid clothes, which made him mentally sigh while thanking him for wearing his mask, since this way Grafia wouldn't notice that Issei looked at her breasts for a moment. Grafia, for a moment I thought you weren't coming, Tatsuya-kun. Tatsuya, sorry for the delay, I had things to do. Grafia, I understand, he said with a kind smile that few had seen, But the reason why Issei was in front of Grafia was because of an event that happened a couple of weeks ago. Flashback. Issei could be seen walking using the appearance of the collar through the forest, which was calm while still deciding what to do at that moment. Ddraig. Hey buddy, it's been several weeks since your fight with your other self. What are you going to do now? Issei, well, the main thing is to know what is different in this world from mine. The second thing is that it seems that we are in a moment before Rias Redding game against Razor, so things that have already happened haven't happened yet. Ddraig, in other words, now that you are in a time before several things happened, you are going to try to change them, correct? Issei, yes, but in this world things happen that were totally different from mine, so things may happen that didn't happen in my world or things may happen that shouldn't happen. He said before noticing a presence in the distance that surprised him, since he did not expect to find someone in that rather remote place, so he stood up surprised while looking in that direction. Before heading to that place, hiding his presence as best he could, since the necklace had several useful functions but he still had to learn how to use them correctly, so he moved without making noise until he stopped on the branch of a tree and saw with some surprise the small clearing of that forest, in which there was a small river that divided the forest. But what surprised Issei the most was seeing the strongest Queen Grafia standing there, as if waiting for something. Issei. What is she doing here? Ddraig. No idea, but it seems like he's waiting for someone. Issei. It seems that way, but who are you waiting for? He thought, bewildered, since it seemed that Grafia had not noticed him yet, since she had a worried face, which surprised Issei since the times he had seen Grafia like that they were very few, so much that he could count them with his hand. So he became more bewildered, but then Grafia seemed to notice something which surprised Issei, since he thought he had been discovered but realized that Grafia had reacted to something else, since in front of her was someone similar to her, whom Issei instantly recognized so much that he became serious when he saw him. Issei, Euclideus Lucifuge. He thought seriously since he still hadn't forgotten what he had done in his world, and it seemed that his character hadn't changed either when he saw the smile on his face when he saw Grafia in front of him. Euclid, Nasan has been spending time. Grafia, get to the point, Euclid, what do you want? She said seriously while the coldness of her words could be heard, which did not surprise Issei much, but it did confuse him since in his world Grafia had never been like this. Since there was more than one difference between the two Grafia he knew, the first was that this Grafia was colder than the one he knew, the second was that the Grafia of his world still had a feeling of brotherhood with her brother Euclid, since he had been locked up and not executed since it was a request from Grafia. Since although he was a criminal they were still brothers, but the Grafia in front of him seemed not to want to interact with her brother, which caught his attention, so he observed carefully while he heard. Euclid, don't be so cold, Nasan, or are you in a hurry to return to Cerzek's side? She said in a mocking manner which didn't catch Issei's attention, since he knew perfectly well that Cerzek was Grafia's husband and they had already had their son Milikas. But it was at that Issei noticed Grafia's cold gaze, which tightened the skirt of her uniform, which bewildered Issei. Euclid, your silence tells me what your answer is, Nasan. Tell me how you felt at that moment when he chose Rise and not you as his wife? Grafia, shut up or I'll kill you. She said coldly while Issei was so surprised upon hearing that he opened his mouth in surprise, since that was something he had not expected at all. Issei, I didn't expect this. Ddraig, I think the same, but it's interesting that she gets upset since even though she wasn't the main wife she could have been the second. He said in Issei's mind, who realized that he forgot that a devil was allowed to have more than one wife, so he sighed in relief since if they hadn't been together Milikas would never have been born. But Issei's relief disappeared with Euclid's next words, which he said with a mocking smile. Euclid, come on Nasan, don't be so cold, after all there is no hurry since Cerzek is busy having an heir with Rise, which you will never be able to do since Cerzek didn't let you join his harem if I remember correctly, he said. I'm sorry, but I can't see you the same way you see me. To me you're like a sister, and that won't change. Tell me how it felt to be rejected by the love of your life? Grafia, shut up. Euclid, come on, answer me, I want to hear your answer. I want to see how much longer you can hold on. She said mockingly while Issei was shocked beyond belief, as he literally never expected Cerzex to reject Grafia. That was something no one would ever think of in their life. It even sounded ridiculous to him given that in his world the love they had for each other was great, which he had witnessed on more than one occasion. Issei. Damn, I never expected this, it never even crossed my mind. Ddraig. I have to admit that it is a fact that no one would expect, but that does not answer why they met. She said as they both watched as the strongest queen fell to her knees, which left Issei speechless as he didn't understand Grafia's action, which she said in a weak voice. Grafia, if that's all you called me for, I'll leave. Euclid, where? You have no place to return to Naysan, because even if you deny it, Cerzex will never accept you in his harem. Maybe he'll let you be part of his entourage out of pure pity, and you know it. Grafia, so what? I'll be by your side until. Euclid, until I notice you? Don't be so naive, Naysan. After all, Rise doesn't like you at all, neither does Ryagun or Magari. And let's not even talk about Penamune, either of them accept you, only Seraphal did, but she is no longer in this world. He said with a cruel smile which made Grafia grit her teeth out of frustration and not being able to say anything against her brother, while Issei was surprised to know who were part of Cerzex's harem in this world, but what left him most surprised was that none of them accepted Grafia. Which he couldn't understand, since if she loved Cerzex so much, why would they deny her to be by his side as one of his wives? Issei. I don't like the direction this conversation is going. He thought seriously as he noticed how Euclid looked at Grafia, since he had a look that Issei had seen a couple of times before when some saw the girls of his harem. So he became serious, while he watched how slowly Euclid approached the weak Grafia, a state that was difficult to see in her, but Issei had remembered something that Cerzex had told him at the moment before being sealed. I ask you, Issei-kun, take care of Grafia in my absence. After all, she is more fragile than she seems. At first Issei did not fully understand what Cerzex had wanted to tell him with the last thing, but after having been close to Grafia he realized that she was emotionally weak, in a state similar to that of Akino. She needed to hold on to something, and that something was Cerzex. But after being sealed she looked for something to hold on to afterwards, which led her to hold on to him, which was why she had said she wanted to turn him into one of the mouths. But in this world it had not gone like the previous one, since here Grafia had been rejected not only by Cerzex, but also by his harem, which closed all kinds of entrances to be by his side, so she had nothing to hold on to now, so if someone hit the right spots they could break Grafia. In other words, this was the goal and reason why Euclid had called her to this place. He knew what Grafia's emotional state was like, so he just had to attack the right spots, and he would succeed. Grafia, it doesn't matter. Euclid, come on, Naysan, you know that no matter what you do, they will never accept you, that's why I called you here. Grafia, what do you mean? Euclid, leave Cerzex and come to my side, help that person so that you can make Cerzex pay for what he did to you, and above all, become mine and I will erase the feelings you have for him. He said as he took Grafia by the chin so she could see him. After all, Euclid had waited for this moment for years. The moment when his sister was weaker, more vulnerable, so much that he could make her as it should have been according to him. Ddraig. Partner, if this continues the demon will break. Issei. I don't doubt that Grafia will pass, she is strong, she will not be fooled. Ddraig. I would have the same opinion as you if she were from your world, since there are many there who could help her slowly recover, but that does not apply here since everything is different here. She was marginalized for years or centuries, and from what I heard it would not surprise me that even though she is the queen of Cerzex she does not have a good relationship with the Gremory family, since there are things that are not the same as in our world, so the character of your acquaintances could be different, and you yourself are proof of that. So in other words, Issei. Grafia's current emotional state is completely critical. Ddraig. Exactly why if no one intervenes she. Grafia. Are you really going to make me forget everything I feel for Cerzex? As soon as Issei heard that he tensed up, since when he saw Grafia's face, he saw several tears falling down her beautiful face as if she could no longer bear the pain she felt, since she had been enduring it for several centuries, and it was thanks to Seraphal that she had not fallen emotionally, but the day she was killed that changed. Since Seraphal was the only one who could fully understand her, as the only one who could give her the support she needed, but since she had died her state had been getting worse with the passing of the days. She couldn't ask for help, no one could help her or understand her, which led her to her current state, which surprised Issei, while Euclid smiled seeing that his wait had finally borne fruit as he said with a happy smile. Euclid, if you give yourself to me, give me your virginity, and I will make you forget everything you feel for Sirzex. He said as he began to slowly bring his face closer to kiss her. In the past Grafia would have resisted, and would have even left Euclid on the verge of death. But the current one was no longer able to think, since all she thought about was finding a way to escape her pain, which Issei knew, so he could no longer stay still. Ddraig, remember that this will bring you consequences. Issei, I know, but I don't care. I promised Sirzex that I would take care of her until he returned, and I don't care if she is not the Grafia that I promised to take care of afterwards. Everything is still the same. He thought before increasing his aura, which caught the attention of both of them, who stopped in surprise when they saw the power of the aura that was not far from them. Which surprised them, they had not noticed the presence of that being, until its aura increased. But of course this did not please Euclid, since at this moment, he had lost a great opportunity to have his sister, which made him furious. Euclid, damn, who are you? Who am I? That's easy to answer. I'm the Crimson Demon, and I'm going to make you pay for what you were going to do, Euclid Lucifuge. He said seriously as he showed his blood-stained sword, which left both brothers shocked as there was blood dripping down Euclid's side. Euclid, this is impossible. At what point? Crimson, you will pay for trying to break the mind and emotions of your own sister Grafia Lucifuge. He shouted before attacking again, which caused Euclid to become serious, while a magic circle appeared in front of him to block Issei's attack, which he jumped while moving his Ascalon sword that Euclid and Grafia recognized. Euclid, impossible Ascalon? He said in surprise while behind Issei heavenly flames appeared, which surprised Euclid even more when he saw the shape of the flame, since the face of a beast could be distinguished. Crimson, first a style dragon, / Atlas flame. He said, surprising Euclid and Grafia even more, who didn't understand what was happening since she hadn't recovered from the initial shock yet. At the same time, a monster appeared from the flames, which attacked Euclid without any mercy, who was more than surprised to see the form of Issei's attack. Since the attack had formed a cross, which was one of the demon's greatest weaknesses, he tried to defend himself as best he could. But being an attack with a holy symbol, the magic circle did not last long before breaking, which made Euclid receive the entire attack, sending him into the trees of the forest. Raising a small smoke screen, which quickly disappeared, revealing a wounded Euclid, who had purple smoke coming out in parts of his entire body, while blood ran from all the wounds, giving him a fatal appearance. Euclid, damn you, rest assured, this won't end like this. He screamed before teleporting away from the place, leaving Issei alone with Grafia, who upon seeing what happened only remained silent, since now her mind was clearer, and she had finally realized what she was almost going to do. So she covered her face with her two hands as she began to cry, something that was very difficult for anyone to see, while Issei remained just silent. Since he did not know what to do now, he had stopped Euclid's plan to take Grafia away and turn her into a criminal. So he sighed as he said seriously, Crimson, Grafia Lucifuge, I don't know what you've been through these years, but I'm absolutely sure that the Grafia Lucifuge of 500 years ago would not have been influenced by those words. As soon as Issei said that, Grafia looked at him in surprise, letting Issei see her face where there were tears still falling, staining her face. Which made Issei sigh, who approached her while taking her face and said while wiping away all her tears, Crimson, just like crying, she wouldn't have done it no matter what the situation was. She would have remained calm, knowing that it wasn't the time for that, and she will move on, so don't cry anymore. Grafia, how can you know? You said it, you don't know everything I've been through in all these years. You say that the previous Grafia wouldn't be like this. How can you be sure of that? I've suffered the rejection of the love of my life. All of her lovers have tried to end my life on more than one occasion. They never accepted me, they always rejected me. So now tell me, why are you totally sure that the old Grafia wasn't going to break? She screamed, releasing part of all the pain that had accumulated throughout her hurt heart, to which Issei did not respond instantly as he watched Grafia continue to cry. So he simply said, Crimson, Why wouldn't the old Grafia have let herself be defeated so easily? She would have fought to the end no matter what the result was. She would have shown that no one should underestimate her, that no one should offend her. The old Grafia would have done that and more. He said seriously, surprising Grafia beyond words, although it was true that she was emotionally weak. Just because she had leaned on someone without realizing it, she had put the pillar of her mental state on a person who was going to have control of her without her noticing, which would never have happened if she hadn't met Ddraig. If she hadn't met him, she wouldn't have changed, but would have become stronger and more determined. But when she met Ddraig, that changed, so she remained silent, before her lips moved, asking one thing. Grafia, who are you? Crimson. My name is Shiva Tatsuya, the Crimson Demon's strongest queen. Grafia Lucifuge, is a pleasure, he said, showing great surprise at having heard Issei's nickname, which without realizing it was going to become his new emotional surprise, thus starting their relationship, which would lead him to the first clues about the truth about the greatest mystery of that world. Why was he evil? Or why were most of all the gods dead? Since that day they began to meet, until the day of the wedding was about to arrive, thus beginning Issei's true work. Chapter 6. The memory of how he got involved with the Grafia of that world flashed through his mind quickly, as ever since that day, he had been meeting Grafia. At first they only met every week, but then it increased to 2, then 3 times a week, but now it was every day that he met her, in a place not far away where he found her with Euclid. Since that day on he gave no signs of returning, not to mention that now his relationship with Grafia was one he didn't expect to have. Grafia, welcome home Tatsuya, he said kindly as he bowed slightly, drawing a mental sigh from Issei upon seeing him, so he simply said. Note, Issei's name will be in italics when he's using Tatsuya's name. Issei, come back. Since it was not the first nor the last time she would return to that place, which had been bought by Grafia, where she allowed her to stay, which she was grateful for, but a few days later she found Grafia crying in the living room, because Rise had finally managed to expel Grafia from the Mao Lucifer's mansion, so she no longer had a place to really go, so she ended up staying there with him. Issei, I thought you were up late with Ddraig. Grafia, apparently he had plans with his harem, she said with a sad smile, which only lasted a few seconds, before changing to a happy one upon seeing him, which was also reflected in her eyes, which Issei did not like very much, since that smile slowly changed as the days went by, since they started living together. From the first day, Grafia's eyes only reflected pain, sadness, and loneliness, feelings that were difficult to notice if you did not pay enough attention, but those feelings day by day were disappearing, being slowly replaced by new feelings. Ones that Issei could not help but recognize, since they were the same feelings with which the girls looked at him when he was with them, a look full of love, longing, desire, feelings that the boy wished were not directed towards him, since that was not right for the brown-haired boy, especially with the promise he had made to the Ddraig of his world. Issei, I see, sorry to hear that. Grafia, it doesn't matter, I knew it was impossible for me to join him, which doesn't matter much now, he said happily as he helped Issei take off his armor, which wasn't the first time he had done so, and it didn't seem to be the last either. Something the black-haired boy had to get used to, since for a few days now Grafia had been treating him as if he were her husband, a feeling that made him feel very guilty. Issei, I see, ignoring that, what did you want to talk to me about? Grafia, true, I almost forgot, he said as the boy sat down on one of the armchairs while Grafia sat in front of him, where she poured him some tea. Grafia, I don't know if you've heard anything about Rias Gremory. Issei, yes, I've heard something about her. Grafia, she recently lost a member of her peerage to an enemy attack, he said as Gasper's death briefly appeared in his mind, which he decided to ignore and focus on what was next. Issei, I see, so she has a vacancy in her peerage. Grafia, right, I was wondering if you could fill that vacancy, she said calmly, leaving Issei slightly surprised, since he had already expected that in part, so he sighed at that. Because the 8 pawns were still inside him, so he wasn't sure if he could join the Rias peerage of this world. Not to mention that this also served as an excuse for Issei to tie himself to the underworld, which would allow him to be even closer to Grafia, who only calmly watched his decision. Issei, why does she want me in her peerage? Grafia, she mentioned that she would be looking for a new member of her peerage, and I mentioned that I could recommend someone to her, but before that, I told her that I would confirm if you were okay with it. She said calmly as her memory came back to what she had talked about with Rias in the club room. Flashback. Grafia looked at Rias's surprise, who had found out what happened to Rise. Which did not please the redhead at all, since she knew what the maid felt for her brother, who had not even seen Grafia as a woman since they met. Grafia, Rias, please calm down, this is not important. Rias, how could it not be? Don't you understand that thanks to that you are no longer a member of the House of Gremory? Grafia, yes, I know, Rias, but we both knew this day would come. Rias, I know, but things started going from bad to worse ever since Oka-sama divorced Oto-san. She said, frustrated as she sat on the couch in front of Grafia, who just silently watched what Rias was saying, who sighed weakly before saying, Rias, what will you do now? You know you can't stay in the Gremory house. If I give you asylum, Oto-san might, you know. Grafia, I know, but Venelana-sama contacted me, and told me that I was welcome in the Bale territory. Rias, I see, that's good to know. Grafia, but I won't go. She said softly, surprising the redhead, who looked in disbelief at what Grafia had said. Since she knew the danger the maid was in, even though she was strong, there was more than one power that wanted her. And now that she didn't have a strong protection, they could try to take advantage of that, which was Rias's biggest concern. Rias, but why? Grafia, I'm tired of life in the underworld, so I was thinking of going somewhere far away to live in peace. Rias, I see, but where? You know that many will not stop until they find you. Grafia, it's a remote place that I found by chance. It's protected by a natural barrier that covers all types of aura, so I'll be safe there, not to mention that I won't be alone. Rias, I see, I'd like to say that I'll visit you, but it'll be safer if I don't also. Who will you be with? Grafia, that's what I wanted to talk to you about alone. She said, referring to the empty club room, where only she and Rias were present. To which the redhead only sighed while drinking her tea, before asking. Rias, go ahead. Grafia, you mentioned to me earlier that you were now looking for a new member of your peerage. Rias, right, what does that have to do with wait, do you want me to? Grafia, yes, accept Tatsuya into your peerage. Rias, Tatsuya? Grafia, better known as Hades' Most Wanted. Rias, the Crimson Demon? She said, surprised to know that the one who was going to keep Grafia company was the Crimson Demon. So she looked at the silver-haired girl, waiting for her to tell her it was a joke, but seeing that she still remained calm, she sighed. Rias, how did you end up with him? Grafia, he saved me. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here right now, and I would simply be the plaything of my brother. She said with a soft smile, as if what happened with Euclid had been a simple problem. Which left Rias speechless, since she could see the feelings that were shown in Grafia's eyes, feelings that she knew very well and that she had given to the person most loved by her and the girls, a mistake that they will partly regret. Rias, I won't ask what happened, but tell me one thing, can we really trust him? Grafia, he hasn't taken advantage of me since we lived together, and I've been quite obvious with all my intentions for him to take me, and he didn't. You can trust him. Tatsuya is not someone who takes advantage of others. Rias, fine, talk to him. If he agrees to talk to me, I'll consider having him join my nobility, he said, bringing a smile to Grafia's face, which made Rias feel partly happy, seeing that the woman she loved like a sister was no longer suffering from unrequited love. End of flashback. That memory slowly came to the maid's mind, who calmly watched Issei, who was still thinking about what to do, because this was an opportunity to be close to the girls. But there was also the possibility that they would know who he was if he was careless. But his biggest problem was that as soon as he received the bishop, the pawns that were still inside him would come out. Issei, I need to think about it, so I'll give you an answer later. Grafia, sure, dinner will be ready soon, so go take a bath, you must be tired. Issei, well, he said before getting up from the couch, to leave the room towards the bathroom of the house, where when he arrived he only took off his clothes. since before to bathe he took off his necklace, but on one occasion Grafia almost got to see him without it, so now he avoided taking off the necklace when he was in the house with her. So he proceeded to bathe calmly, while talking to his partner. Issei. What do you think, Ddraig? Ddraig. To be honest, this is a good opportunity. You can be in the nobility of your beloved, but at the same time you run the risk that in a moment of carelessness they discover your true identity. But if you join the nobility we will be able to know the reason why you are a villain. Issei. You're right, for some reason Grafia doesn't know why the Issei of this world is a villain, so it's best to ask the girls, not to mention that we can find a way to return. Ddraig. Then you will give up your 8 pawns for a bishop. If you do, you will lose Triana. Issei. True, I had forgotten, but there must be a way to get the bishop and my pawns inside, right? Ddraig. I wondered the same thing, and I think it's possible. We're in a different world, where almost nothing is the same as our world, which means that the evil pieces of this world are different from those of our world. He said calmly, to which Issei simply nodded, since what he had said was true. So now the option of returning to Ria's peerage seemed to be more viable, which he was going to discuss with Ddraig, who without warning asked. Ddraig. Which reminds me, when are you going to have Hex with the maid? I don't want to be awake when it happens, so let me know ahead of time. As soon as she mentioned that, Issei stood still, as if he had been struck by lightning. Since he was not an idiot, he even noticed all of Grafia's attempts to seduce him, including her getting into his bed alone and sleeping with him, always wearing an outfit that easily exposed all of her feminine charms, to which any man would feel the need to touch. And the boy was no exception, since on more than one occasion, he tried to take advantage of Grafia's vulnerability and touch her beautiful body, which caused him to end up hitting himself more than once, since if he couldn't control himself, he was going to end up with Grafia moaning his name beneath him, so he quickly said, Issei. That will never happen. Ddraig. Really? Then you're going to do the same thing you did with your harem? Look and don't touch? If so, it's certainly a bit, don't be offended, but if you do that you'll look like a prince. He said, causing a slight tic to form on Issei's face. He tried his best to calm himself down before saying, Issei. That was because they always interrupted us when we were about to do it. Ddraig. Yeah, right. That's as real as me praising the Issei, don't lie, buddy. You've wanted to do it with the maid for a long time, and she wants no one but you to hit her hard, so there's no problem what's stopping you. Issei. She is my brother-in-law's current wife, did you forget? Ddraig. Of course I remember, it's more a dragon always has a good memory except you, but we're not talking about the maid of our world, we're talking about the one of this world. Issei. Whether it's from our world or not, it's still the same Grafia. Ddraig. Not really, since the maid of this world has many differences from the maid of our world. Issei. What differences? They are the same, in fact. If we put them together it would be a problem to identify which is which. Ddraig. Not really, since the Grafia of this world has 5 centimeters more bust than the Grafia of our world, as well as her waist, which is more formed than that of our world, as are her thighs, but among others, not to mention that she is absolutely virgin. She said, leaving the boy speechless, since that was something he hadn't noticed at all. Since although he had seen part of the size of this Grafia's breasts, he had never seen them without her bra, so he hadn't noticed that, like her waist, or but as Ddraig had said, which he said again. Ddraig. I guess the fact that she didn't marry the redhead, and then didn't have a child. It made her body mature faster, consequently, a beautiful woman ready to be with anyone she decided to love, in this case you. Issei. You may be right, but you're forgetting something important. Ddraig. What thing? Issei. She's not in love with me, Hyoudou Issei, she's in love with Shiva Tatsuya, the boy who saved her without receiving anything in return. He said seriously as he looked at his reflection in the water, an appearance that was not his own. The appearance that Grafia was in love with, which was simply a disguise, which was why Issei hadn't done anything. Ddraig. You are certainly right about that. Plus, if she found out it was you, she would quickly confuse the Issei she knows, but you should still give her the love she expects you to give her, at least until we get back. Then we can use some kind of spell and erase her memories, or find someone to take care of her. Issei. Making her happy while I'm in this world and leaving her in the hands of another when I'm gone, it's certainly unfair to her and me. Ddraig. And what else can you do? Ignore his feelings like the Mao did? That doesn't make you very different from him. Issei. I know, Ddraig, but doing that to Grafia, giving her love, affection and hope, then leaving her alone with another man, that's pretty cruel. Ddraig. It is, but it's not like you can take it with you, but in the end the decision is yours. The boy knew that perfectly well, that what would happen between him and Grafia was his decision. So he sighed a little before getting out of the bathtub, then changed his clothes and returned to the living room, where he saw Grafia cooking something. Meanwhile, his previous conversation with Ddraig came to his mind, which caused him to shake his head to get those thoughts away. Issei. What should I do? I don't want to hurt her, but it's not right for me to be with my brother-in-law's wife either. Ddraig. Partner, I'll tell you this in a way you'll understand. I'm convinced that someone else in this situation wouldn't have been hesitating like you do, but would have already reciprocated the maid's feelings. And it's more than likely that they would already be doing it with the maid, almost every night or every night, so anyone would call you an idiot for not having done anything yet. Issei. If you're not going to tell me anything to help me. Ddraig. Are you serious? I've already given you enough reasons to accept her, even now you might be. Issei. Hug her from behind lovingly and whisper softly in her ear, Grafia, be mine tonight, is that what you mean? Ddraig. Actually, I was going to tell you to help him cook, but doing that isn't bad either, he said, leaving the black-haired boy more than surprised, seeing that Ddraig was going to suggest that he help her cook. While he thought about sleeping with Grafia, he just sighed heavily, which caught the silver-haired girl's attention. Grafia, Tatsuya, wait a bit, the food is almost ready. Issei, I understand. Ddraig. Are you going to do something about her feelings or leave her waiting like the Mao? Issei. But she is my brother-in-law's wife whom I respect like a brother. Ddraig. And these are the moments when I wish I had my physical body to punch you for being an idiot. Issei. Are you really going to insult me for respecting my brother-in-law's wife and also my sister-in-law? Ddraig. Didn't I just tell you that we're in an alternate world? In this world nothing is the same. She didn't marry Serzex, but is single. She was already expelled from the red-haired nobility. The Grafia of your world doesn't. She doesn't have a son. The one in your world does. The one in your world isn't a virgin. She is. So understand once and for all that they are not the one. Same. She is not the Grafia that you promised to take care of. She is another. So make up your mind once and for all. It is truly desperate to see this kind of attitude when you want to be with her too, she said, leaving the black-haired man unable to say anything momentarily. He had to admit it. What Ddraig said was true. She was not the Grafia he promised to take care of. She was another. There was not just one, but more than one difference between them. But there was still a fact that Ddraig could not refute. Issei. Did you forget? She didn't fall in love with Hyoudou Issei, but with Shiva Tatsuya, with someone who doesn't exist. Ddraig. Shiva Tatsuya exists because you make him exist. You created that being, so you have to take full responsibility. Make her as happy as you can. Even if it means a lie, after all. A sweet lie is better than a cruel reality. You know what she has suffered. She deserves to be happy, so I ask you, are you going to deny her that? Ddraig's words had made Issei rethink everything that had happened. He knew that Grafia had suffered more than once. He saw how the love of his life was happy with other women, who closed all opportunities to be with him. She suffered countless mockery and abuse. All until she met him. He saved her without thinking about the consequences. He caused all that, and he had to take responsibility. Issei. No, it would be cruel of me to deny her happiness. The Grafia of this world deserves to be happy, but give her a sweet lie. Ddraig. There are times when a sweet lie is better than a cruel reality. And you know that well. What happens next will depend entirely on you. Never forget that a dragon is selfish by nature, so decide what you will do now. With those last words, Ddraig fell back asleep, leaving Issei in doubt about what to do now. He knew that in an indirect way, he was stealing Grafia. In the same way as the Serzex of that world, so he sighed heavily, not knowing what to do. On one hand, he knew that Ddraig was right. She was not the Grafia he promised to take care of. So, regardless of what will happen between them, it would not affect the promise he made to Celestial Issei. If what Ddraig said is true, if the dragon really is selfish by nature, then it's okay for it to be that way right now. With that thought in mind, she put aside her current doubts and slowly approached Grafia, who was still cooking. She didn't notice Issei's proximity, who stood behind her and without saying a word, gently hugged her from behind, surprising the maid, who felt Issei's arms surround her waist, while her head was resting on her shoulder. Grafia, Tatsuya, what's wrong? It's not normal that. Issei, Grafia, answer me, do you love me? As soon as she finished saying the question, Grafia stood still in her place, since she had not expected that question at all. So without saying anything, she left the utensils on the table, turning slightly towards Issei's head that rested on her shoulder. Grafia, Issei, don't think I don't notice all your insinuations. I thought you just wanted to thank me using your whole body, but in the end I realized that it wasn't about that. He said softly in her ear, which caused a slight chill to run through Grafia. She turned her body around, coming face to face with Issei, who didn't take a step back and pinned Grafia against the table. Letting them both feel each other's bodies, Issei felt the softness of Grafia's breasts rub against his chest, while the maid felt Issei's strong chest through her breasts, causing the atmosphere to become slightly more tense. Grafia, really? Then what was my intention? Issei, you wanted me to take you not for just one night, but you want me to take you as my woman, am I wrong? She said without taking her gaze off Grafia's for a single second, who felt Issei's leg enter between her legs, pressing lightly on her intimacy, causing a weak electric current to run through her back, which she had never felt throughout her life. She felt helpless against Issei, so much so that she didn't know how to react. Because with every second he would take more advantage over her, which she also did not intend to avoid. She longed for that, for him to take her, not just for one night like he said, but she wanted to be his woman. Only his woman, so she put her hands on Issei's cheeks, and with a weak smile she said, Grafia, no, you don't. I wish to be your woman. I may have once wished to be Celestial's woman, but I understood the fact that it would never happen. I thought I would be left alone, but without expecting it, you appeared in front of me and saved me from a cruel fate, and slowly I fell in love with you, Tatsuya. Issei, so if I asked you to give me your virginity now in this place, would you give it to me? Grafia, if you asked me, I'll give it to you. I won't refuse. You can do whatever you want with me. My whole body, my whole soul belongs only to you and no one else. She said softly as she brought Issei's face closer to hers, who let himself be guided by Grafia. Using her hands, she brought their lips together, thus initiating a kiss between them. The first one they had given each other, the one Grafia had lasted for a long time, the one Issei had been avoiding, had happened in an instant. One where there was no rush, a kiss where both enjoyed. One where they felt each other's feelings without needing to speak, one that both had wanted to do from the beginning. A kiss where both just let themselves go, starting with the black-haired man putting one of his hands on Grafia's back, where he took the zipper of the maid's suit, and slowly began to lower it. Grafia, wait. Issei, sorry, did I rush? Grafia, no, that's not it. I said I'd let you do whatever you wanted to me, but... Issei, but? He said with some doubt, since for a moment, he thought he was going too fast. But Grafia's words told him that she was ready for what was next, but for some reason she stopped him. It was as if she wanted to confirm something or was worried about something, in which Issei was wrong. Grafia, but the one I want and wish to take me as his woman is not you, Tatsuya. She said softly to the black-haired boy, who surprised him. He hadn't expected that at all. But without him noticing, Grafia moved both of her hands away from her cheeks, and placed them on the back of her neck, where she took the clasp of the collar, which she easily removed, causing the boy to return to his original appearance, easily revealing his brown hair, along with his honey-colored eyes, like the color and original shape of his face. Grafia, it's you, Issei Hyoudou Issei. She said softly, leaving Issei speechless, as he had returned to his true appearance. But in Grafia's eyes there was no surprise, nor fear, but rather she retained all the same feelings that she had shown him before. Issei, do you know who I am? How? I am not. Grafia, calm down. I know you're not the Issei I know. he said calmly without a single bit of fear, as if he understood that he was not that Issei who had caused more than one person great pain. Ddraig, I have to admit, I wasn't expecting this. It was a plot twist I didn't expect in the slightest. Issei. Wait, you were awake? You bucking peeping Tom. Ddraig. Hey, calm down. I was a little curious about how you would act in this situation, and when you were going to have Hex I was going to go to sleep, since that is something I respect. He said as if what he was doing was nothing bad, so he was going to tell her what he thought about it, but Graphia's voice stopped him. Graphia, the Issei I know is a cold and cruel person, who did not hesitate to betray his own for power. It is something in which both differ, but what told me that you are not the Issei I know, was that you are the bearer of the Apocalypse boosted gear. Issei/Ddraig. The Apocalypse that? The two thought surprised and somewhat strange, given that the Apocalypse did not go with the name of the boosted gear as they remembered, so that part had confused them. Issei. Why does it have Apocalypse in the name? Ddraig. Who cares? It sounds better that way, and from now on it will be called that way. Issei. You know he's not referring to you, he said before separating slightly from Graphia, who upon seeing this, felt a slight sense of disappointment. But she knew that they could no longer continue with what they were doing. She knew that Issei was looking for answers, so she could only wait for this situation to repeat itself later. Issei, Graphia, at what point did you realize it was Issei? Graphia, it was a few weeks ago where I realized that at that time I was called to talk to him, Mao Beelzebub, since he was the one who was going to remove my queen piece from inside me, but when I left I quickly returned, since I had forgotten something I had to tell you, and that was where I saw you taking off your necklace. Hearing that, Issei remembered that just then he had taken off his collar to adjust it with the help of Ddraig. So if Graphia was present at that moment, she could clearly see when he manifested boosted gear on his arm. Graphia, at that moment I was in shock, realizing that the man I fell in love with was the most hated and wanted by all the factions. I didn't know what to think, or what to do at that moment, but just at that moment, you manifested a crimson gauntlet on your arm, so I understood that you weren't the Issei I knew. Issei. If it weren't for that, I'm sure Graphia would never have stayed with me again. Graphia. But still, I couldn't even explain why there were two Issei, so I investigated on my own until I came to a single conclusion, that you don't belong here, you come from another world. Ddraig. Impressive. With just a little research she came to that conclusion. I must admit that I am impressed by her intelligence, he mentioned before falling silent again, which Issei couldn't help but agree with. He always knew that someone would find out who he was, but he never expected the first one to be Graphia, so he remained calm before saying, Issei, at this point there is no point in hiding it. If I come from another world, which is completely different from this one in it, you. Graphia, I know, if you hesitated so much to take me, it means that in that place I did marry Sirzex, and you are with Rias and the girls. Issei, yes, that's why I had more than one doubt. I didn't know how to act in response to your feelings. Graphia, I don't know my other self, and I'm sure she doesn't either, but I'm sure we have more than one difference, which doesn't make us exactly the same as you think, she said softly, leaving the brunette somewhat surprised, before remembering that now he didn't have to pretend with Graphia anymore, so he could know more about the events of this world. But when he saw Graphia's somewhat wrinkled clothes, he remembered what happened a few moments ago. Issei, I see now that you know that your other self achieved your goal. Would you like to go to that world to live that dream? Although you would have to. Graphia, no, maybe I thought about it seriously a few months ago, but now my heart is no longer with the Mao Lucifer but with you, she said softly before bringing her face closer to Issei's, where they joined their lips again. Although he hesitated for a moment, Issei returned the kiss, one that slowly rose in tone. There were questions he wanted to ask, things he needed to confirm at that moment. But just this once, he was going to ignore all of that, to be with Graphia, not just that night, but all the ones that followed. Issei, then come with me the moment I return to my world, come with me, the brunette said seriously as he slightly separated from the maid's lips, who opened her eyes with some surprise, which changed to one of joy and happiness, as she put her hands on Issei's shoulders, who calmly waited for the answer. Graphia, I'll follow you wherever you go, I'll fight as long as you do, I'll retreat when you do, if you ever die I'll die by your side. She said without a single hesitation. Her heart had already been hurt before, Issei unknowingly healed it. Without it, her life lost meaning, so she would go with Issei no matter where he went. Which Issei knew, so without hesitation he once again kissed Grafia, who put her arms around the boy's neck, making sure he wouldn't walk away from her again. Which he didn't plan on doing, but instead, letting himself be carried away for the moment, he grabbed the zipper of the maid outfit, and pulled it down to where it was at the waist, thus revealing Grafia's back, as well as the hook of her white bra. Issei, Grafia, I want you to be mine tonight and the nights yet to come. Grafia, yes, I want you to, I'll be yours every night, my whole body belongs to you. With those words they joined their lips again, taking out everything they both felt at that moment. So Issei proceeded to lower the maid's suit while Grafia tried to take off the brown-haired boy's shirt, but not everything was pink for both of them. And they knew that when a magic circle appeared in the room, with the symbol of the Mao Lucifer. Chapter 7. Surprise appeared on their faces when they saw the symbol of the magic circle, so they quickly separated. The two did not understand why the magic circle appeared in that place, being that the natural barrier prevented transportation through the circle from being more difficult to carry out, unless they did it far enough from the cabin. But that didn't matter to them as much, since there was no time to think about it at the moment. Both of them had seconds to be able to fix all their clothes. Which wasn't possible, so Grafia handed the necklace to Issei before she pushed him into the pantry room, where she closed the door, before turning off what she had put to cook, hearing a voice she knew perfectly. Grafia. Hearing the voice, the aforementioned only limited herself to sighing before slowly turning around, seeing the one who had caused her so much pain for at least 500 years. The demon she fell in love with was in front of her once again, wearing an outfit worthy of the Mao's. Sirzex Lucifer looked her in the eyes. Grafia, Sirzex, what are you doing here? The tone of her question had been a little cold, as if his mere presence made her uncomfortable. Something that the Mao noticed instantly, given that the silver-haired girl had never spoken to him in that tone, which had always been polite, as well as somewhat affectionate. So this question caused a slight discomfort inside him. Sirzex, I heard that you refused the asylum that mother gave you in the Bale family. Grafia, that's right, I didn't want to live in the underworld anymore, that's why I moved here. Something was wrong, he had noticed it the moment he saw Sirzex. Due to his previous actions with Issei, the entire zipper of his suit was down. Therefore the suit was somewhat loose, which was why he was using both of his arms to keep the suit in place. Something that Sirzex had already noticed, and he didn't take his eyes off it, causing him to shiver a bit. Sirzex, I see, may I ask why your suit is about to fall off? Grafia, I was making dinner, so I was thinking of taking a bath while it finished warming up. Sirzex, I understand, what is it? Grafia, you still haven't answered me. What are you doing here? A silence formed between the two. Grafia's question had been asked in a more serious tone, causing the silence to be broken by the weak sigh of the Mao, who responded. Sirzex, Issei attacked again, but not directly, but he sent his companions to the Phoenix territory where he stole hundreds of tears. Grafia, I see, but how does that affect me? I no longer belong to anything related to the underworld. My family became extinct a long time ago, and for a few weeks now I have no longer been an official member of your nobility. And I just have to wait for Ajuka's confirmation to have the Queen's peace removed from me. So I ask once again, what are you doing here? Her answer had been harsh and cold, to which the Mao observed with surprise and some disbelief. He had never expected that Grafia would answer him in that way, so without wasting any more time he said, Sirzex, I came for you. I talked to Rise and got her to agree to let you come back. You will no longer work as my assistant like you did before, but you will be the protector of my children. My son with Rise will be born in a couple of months, and you are powerful enough to take care of him, not only him, but my future children as well. You would take care of them. The Mao's words had left the former maid speechless, who couldn't get over her surprise. Clearly this was a way for Rise to make her suffer. She knew that taking care of her children with Sirzex would be painful for her, something that the Mao didn't even notice or simply ignored. Which not only caused great anger in Grafia, but also an Issei who was listening to the conversation between the two, which the Mao had not yet noticed due to the barrier that surrounded the entire place, something that the brunette was temporarily grateful for. Thanks to that he could hear without even worrying about Ddraig discovering him. Issei. I never thought that the Ddraig of this world was a bastard. Ddraig. There are certainly many differences in the Ddraig with the one we know. Without a doubt this is a miserable bastard who only wants Grafia to have her as a trophy. Issei. Trophy? Ddraig. That's right, you want to say that Ddraig to boast about not only having a harem of beautiful women, but also having as a servant, or in this case, an equally beautiful caregiver for his children. Basically it's like he collects them. It was certainly close to what the redhead did. He only wanted to have Grafia as a trophy. A completely exclusive trophy that only he possessed. He had already thrown her away once for Rise. Now he wanted her back, as if he wanted to announce to everyone that even if they separated, he was still the owner of Grafia, who only looked at the redhead before saying, Grafia, are you serious? Do you want me to take care of your children? Ddraig, that's right, Rise agrees with that, so after the piece is removed, you. Grafia, I refuse. He spoke, interrupting the Mao's words, who was surprised to hear that, so much so that he looked at the maid in surprise. The maid only devoted herself to observing him seriously. She didn't understand him. Ddraig wasn't even capable of understanding why Grafia had rejected him, so much so that he could only utter a question, trying to find out the reason for the rejection. Ddraig, why? Grafia, are you seriously asking? There's no way I would agree to something like that, Ddraig, not even my past self would. Her angry words left the Mao even more confused. He had known the silver-haired girl for over 500 years. He knew perfectly well that in all those years, she had fallen madly in love with him, to the point that she stayed by his side even when he rejected her. Ddraig, I don't understand, why does he still have willpower? Did the plan with Euclid not work? It was his thought as he saw the maid standing firm before him, not adopting the submissive form she had before when they were alone. Instead she stood firm, giving no sign of backing down, a development that did not please him. Ddraig, even your past self wouldn't accept it? Don't make me laugh. Grafia. Ddraig, you can pretend to be serious and strong in front of others if you want, but the reality is that you are emotionally weak. You need to hold on to something to keep yourself stable. And the moment you saw me, you clung to me, something that I allowed the moment I noticed it, or did you think that I let you be by my side out of pity? Grafia was shocked. She couldn't believe what she had just heard at that moment. She even doubted for a moment if she had heard correctly. And she wasn't the only one. Issei had also doubted it. Ddraig's tone had changed from soft and gentle to cold and serious. Grafia, so it was true when Serafal told me you had two types of personality. I didn't believe her. But at this moment I realized she wasn't lying. You really are trash. I don't understand why I fell in love with you. Ddraig, say what you want, but it doesn't take away the fact that you still love me. I am the pillar that holds up all your stupid emotions. That idiot Euclid may fail, but I won't. I'm going to transform you into the toy you were meant to be since we met, one that only I can play with as many times as I want. Issei was surprised. He knew that in this alternate world there were 2 or 3 things different in the personalities of the people he knew, but he didn't expect that some of them were really bastards. He could certainly call the Ddraig as the alter ego of the Ddraig of his world, as if they were 2 sides of the same coin. Issei. This bastard, then what happened with Euclid was his doing. Ddraig. It seems so. The Ddraig of this world is the worst jerk I've ever met. Issei. True, but if he tries to do something to Grafia, I'll. Grafia, what stupidity. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the words of the maid, who was looking at a surprised Ddraig, to which he only gave a smile full of contemplation to the Mao, who simply looked at the maid without being able to say anything. Grafia, do I still love you? You're the pill of my stupid emotions? Don't talk nonsense, Ddraig. I told you before, didn't I? My past self and my current self are very different. Ddraig, what do you mean? Grafia, don't you understand? I'll explain it to you. My past self loved you, but my current self detests you. You were the pillar of my emotions. You are not now. Do you understand? The Grafia you speak of ceased to exist. The one in front of you is another Grafia, one who is not afraid of you, one who left behind her submission for you, one who hates you to the core of her being. You mean nothing to me anymore, Ddraig. With those words, a great silence formed between both demons, one that, unlike the previous one, that was one full of discomfort, this one was one full of great hostility, which was confirmed when a weak aura of the power of destruction began to surround Ddraig, who maintained a deadly serious look, where only one feeling could be noticed: anger. Something that left Grafia slightly surprised, because that was the first time she saw that look on the Mao. Ddraig, oh, I get it, so the hitch now dares to bite the hand that fed her for years. The Mao's words were cold. Grafia's words had finished off the little patience he had left before. The reason why he almost lost control, he knew that if Grafia dared to tell him that, it was because there was already someone else in her heart, who, unlike him, that person had not only managed to change her, but had made her fall in love to such an extent that she dared to go against him. Something that he did not intend to allow at all. He was the one who could have Grafia. He was the only one who could use her as he wanted. He was the only one with that right. Ddraig, although honestly that doesn't matter, you will come with me even if I have to bring you to the brink of death. Grafia, try it. I want to know once and for all which transcendental is stronger. With her words, a faint silver aura began to appear around her, indicating that she was not lying with what she said, but that she was willing to continue and see who of the two was the strongest. Issei. Ddraig, get ready. Ddraig. I know, if you want to help when the fight starts, you'll need the Dabalos dragon, but... Issei. I know, I'll only go out when it's really necessary. She knew that Grafia's strength could not be underestimated at all. For a reason, she had been named the strongest queen. She was in her world, but in this one she was even stronger, since this Grafia, unlike the one in her world, was classified as a transcendental. And the one in her world was classified as a super demon, demonstrating one more difference between them. Ddraig. Oh, in that case, let's see who of the two is left standing. Before he could finish his words, a magic circle manifested in the room, not far from where Ddraig had appeared. Something that took both of them by surprise, because the two of them recognized the symbol within the magic circle that showed a blurry image of a man. Ddraig Sajuka. As soon as I mentioned the name, the hologram of the Mao appeared inside the magic circle. Only it was more than blurry, even flickering on more than one occasion due to the natural aura surrounding the cabin. Ajuka. Ddraig, you have now underworld. That was what he said before the entire hologram disappeared, as well as the magic circle. Causing the Mao to sigh, he knew he couldn't stay any longer. No thanks to Ajuka's call, even if he wanted to subdue Grafia, he still had a great responsibility as a Mao. That's without taking into account the time it was going to take to subdue Grafia, who only sighed in relief upon seeing that. Ddraig, it seems something happened during my absence. If you made the effort to contact me, you're in luck. Grafia, the one who got lucky here is you. With that last exchange, the Mao headed towards the place where the magic circle had manifested, where he created one to leave. But before leaving, he gave one last look to Grafia, focusing specifically on her maid dress, which she was still holding. Something that caught his attention a little, causing him to close his eyes before leaving Grafia alone in the place. Who, upon seeing that Ddraig had finally left, relaxed. Although she did not show it, she was worried that Ddraig had discovered Issei. But thanks to the barrier surrounding the cabin, she did not notice it because all his attention was on her. Grafia, it was close. Issei, it certainly was, he said as he left the cupboard with a somewhat annoyed face due to all the information Ddraig had given him. He had never expected the redhead to be such a bastard, in his own words. Grafia, if it weren't for the barrier, the tea would have noticed instantly. Issei, it seems so, but no matter if he noticed me or not, I have the strength to face him. His words surprised the maid, since she did not expect the Issei in front of her to have more power than what she had been told before. She even believed that the Issei from her world was much stronger than her. Grafia, I understand, but now that he came once, he'll do it again. It's just a matter of time. Issei, right, I guess we should change places soon. Grafia, both? She asked in surprise, because her plan was to face Ddraig when he returned. Obviously she would make Issei stay away from the fight. Since there was no way Cerzex could find out about the existence of another world like his, given that he knew very well that the redhead would start some kind of plan to conquer that world. Issei, that's right, I'm not going to leave you alone against Cerzex. Grafia, but if he finds out there's another world, he might try to start a. Issei, it doesn't matter, I know something I realized, it's that the power levels between both worlds are mostly different. If we talk about strength, my world would have a slight advantage. Grafia, I see, but it would be best if you faced him directly. Before he finished speaking, the brown-haired boy hugged her gently, something that surprised her because she wasn't expecting that action. Grafia, Issei? Issei, I told you, didn't I? I want you not just for one night, but I want you for every night by my side. You are my woman, Grafia, and if to have you I have to face the Cerzex of this world, I will do it without hesitation. I will not let you leave my side because I love you. Issei's words had reached deep into her heart, destroying any kind of doubt and fear, causing more than one tear to form in her eyes, where without her permission they began to fall on the shirt of the brunette who hugged her without giving any sign of letting go. Grafia, it's not fair for you to tell me that now, Issei. It's not fair. I want to protect you from Cerzex. I will use all my strength to achieve it, even if I have to give. Issei, I won't allow it. At his words, the strength of the hug increased, causing more surprise in the maid who was running out of strength to respond. Grafia, why? Issei, you told me yourself, if I fight, you fight. If I retreat, you retreat. So if I retreat now, you will too. With those words, Grafia lost all strength to respond. She wanted to face Cerzex to keep the brunette's existence a secret. So she was willing to die in their encounter if necessary. But with Issei's words, she understood that he would not let her go no matter what she said. Grafia, I understand. I will follow you wherever you go, Issei. I will no longer hesitate and will follow you. Issei, then just play along with this. Grafia, huh? At his words, the maid looked up in surprise before feeling the brunette's lips stick to hers once again. Only now the boy put aside all his doubts and worries to focus solely on Grafia. Reason why he had not held back and had gone all out from the beginning, joining his tongue with Grafia's, creating different types of sounds that only increased his lust for the maid who, obeying the brunette, followed the flow of the kiss until they both separated. Issei, Grafia, I wish you. Grafia, I know I want you too, Issei, my beloved Issei. There was no need to say more, both understood their partner's desire well. And without hesitation, both joined their lips in a kiss that demonstrated the love and desire they had for each other. While they clumsily made their way to the bedroom, where the two were finally going to consummate not only their lust and desire, but they were also going to consummate the love they had for each other. Chapter 8. While Issei and Grafia were in the cabin showing their love, in one of the main castles of the entire underworld, Cerzex Lucifer was walking worriedly through the halls, where a slight concern was noticeable on his face and fear. A feeling that he had only felt a couple of times. In fact, only those three could cause him so much fear that he could be confused with terror. Something that was very normal to feel when he was in front of those three, and it was no secret that he was the only one who feared them. Cerzex, why do you want to see me? We're only supposed to meet once a year, but you calling me like that is a bad sign. It was Cerzex's thought as he watched himself getting closer to his destination, which he reached by turning into one of the corridors where there was a large door made of different types of luxurious materials. Where he only gave a sigh before approaching, in which he heard how the door opened, letting the light from inside come out, as well as a female voice. You're finally here. Cerzex, I was getting tired of waiting. You have a lot to explain. At those words, Cerzex just sighed, trying to calm his whole body, so without making the owner of that soft voice wait any longer, he entered the room. While that was happening in the underworld, in the cabin in the middle of the forest, slight moans could be heard coming from inside. Specifically from one of the rooms, where Grafia was against the wall moaning without being able to contain herself. Lemon skipped. In the underworld where Cerzex was, things were not going well, since inside the room different types of sounds could be heard coming from the room that Cerzex had entered previously. Pathetic. It was heard from inside before the sound of a bang was heard, which had been caused thanks to the blow Cerzex had received in his face, sending him quickly against the wall where he spat out blood before falling to the ground. Cerzex, please, I beg your pardon. Shut your damn mouth, and you still dare to ask that if you weren't one of the Transcendentals. I would have ripped your head off already. The woman standing a few meters away from him shouted furiously, wearing only quite revealing and erotic underwear, highlighting her figure perfectly, which could be seen thanks to the fact that she was wearing a small transparent nightgown, which only increased her attractiveness. And it was not an exaggeration to call her one of the most beautiful demons in the entire underworld, with her large breasts slightly larger than Graphia's, as well as her heart-shaped butt, which caught the eye of everyone who saw it, adding to her firm legs as well as her sensual figure. It made her completely attractive not only to the entire male population, but also to the female population. Sirs, my incompetence led to this result. I deserve punishment for it. Even though he felt like all his organs were screaming in pain, Sirs spoke submissively, not letting a single drop of blood from his mouth fall to the ground. Just as he did not dare to raise his gaze, he only stared at the ground in fear. A punishment? Are you serious? Of course you deserve one, you moron. Do you think your actions have no consequences? I've been tolerant of your damn whims, but what you did now ended all my patience. Sirs simply stood with his head on the ground, not daring to say anything in response. Even the other two demons present in the room remained indifferent to the beating he had received. And they also showed no interest in helping him, something that Sirs had already expected, even though one of them was his own mother. She simply read the book in her hands without paying attention to what was happening, wearing an outfit similar to her partner's with a different color, which like her highlighted her beautiful figure, which was more noticeable due to the position in which she was lying. And believe me, Rise is not going to be saved from this either, Sirs. As soon as he heard that, the redhead was surprised for a moment, before he unconsciously raised his head, which he didn't have time to do since the demon had stepped on it hard, forcing him to look at the ground once again, where again he did nothing to defend himself. Who said you could lift your head? His words were cold, filled with great contempt for Sirs, who just stood still, not daring to even move a finger. Even as the force on his head increased, as did the pain. You are pathetic, Sirs. Even with that strength you act like a child. I told you countless times never dare to hurt Graphia, and I find out that you not only expel her from your family, but also from your peerage. Did you not manage to understand that simple warning? His words caused Sirs to fall silently once again. He knew the trouble he had gotten himself into, and what would happen if he did not calm the current situation down. Sirs, I'll lose, but Euclid was the... Do you think I don't know anything about what Euclid's trying to do? I've already sat for his head, so he won't live to see tomorrow. But what about you? Will you make it to tomorrow? Her words made Sirs tense. He knew perfectly well that if she said she was going to kill him, she was going to do it with all certainty. She possessed the strength not only to kill him, but she had the strength to destroy everything in her path. Sirs, am I going to die today? I already told you, if you weren't one of the 13 Transcendentals I would have killed you already, although killing you that easily would be too merciful on my part, don't you think? Sirs, yes, I believe so, Lilith-sama. He said at last, raising his head towards the woman, who simply looked at him in her eyes with anger before turning around to sit on the edge of her bed. Lilith, if you really believe that, you will go with Graphia to fix what you just did. I don't care what you have to say to her to get her to come back, but she has to come back. I think the same. Graphia is one of the most powerful of us, and her leaving like that will cause more than one problem, said the other woman in the room, who was simply sitting in front of a mirror combing her hair very calmly, and like her companions she also came wearing an outfit that gave her a very notable sensuality and charm. Venelana, Graphia is powerful. There is no doubt about that, but what really matters to us is that she is still a virgin after all these years, and you know what that means. Sirs, who still retains 100% of giving birth to a transcendental which could reach them. Lilith, that's right, Valeria is no longer a virgin because she slept with Dulio a few years ago, losing 100% to give birth to a transcendental. Now she only retains 30%. That's why Graphia is important to us. She could give birth to a true demon who is worthy to take the name of Lucifer. Sirs, I thought Serog would be the next Lucifer. Venelana, although young Serog's performance is not bad, he is still far from what we expect. In the future he will surpass you and perhaps surpass Graphia's power. but he will not surpass Misla's power, that is something that even she knows. He said, looking at the demon who was just combing her hair, who sighed upon hearing what Venelana said about her son, who, unlike Venelana with her son Cerzex, she had a great affection for him, so she simply spoke. Misla, Serog's talent at birth was astonishing, so much so that it was not difficult to see that he was actually a transcendental, but his power, she said before stopping with a weak sigh, while Cerzex only saw Lilith's reaction, who only gave a sigh before returning her gaze to Venelana, who upon sensing it turned to look at her calmly. Lilith, what about Rias? Have you accepted her power yet? Venelana, not yet, since Issei became the enemy to defeat. She stopped using him because he was the only one who could calm her down when she got out of control without problems. Misla, if it weren't for that, she would be part of the 13 Transcendentals, not far from Serog's position or Rise's. Lilith, it's just a matter of time. At some point he will use it again with or without Issei's help. But getting back to the topic, Cerzex, I want Grafia back. We still have to choose her new partner because it will no longer be you. Cerzex, about that I don't think Grafia would be willing to go back even if I told her it was an order from the three of us. At those words, the three of them looked at the redhead seriously, something that only made them out tense. Since he clearly felt the aura emanating from the three demons classified as the most powerful in the underworld. Venelana, what do you mean? She wouldn't be able to disobey us. Misla, she is the most loyal of all the 13 Transcendentals towards us. Lilith, so why do you say she won't come back even if we order her to? Cerzex just stood still before the three demons who had left their places to stand in front of him, all emanating dangerous auras from their bodies. Cerzex, for the same reason she followed me everywhere, she ended up falling in love with someone else, someone I would be more than willing to fight for to know which Transcendental was the strongest. His words surprised the three of them, who quickly exchanged glances confirming what each one was thinking, so they looked with great seriousness at the redhead. He only told everything that happened in the cabin, where moans could be heard in Grafia's room, as they were both lying in bed kissing passionately before they separated. Grafia, you know, I thought the first man I'd sit next to would be the mouse Cerzex. Now I'm glad that wasn't the case. Issei, me too, but more importantly now, you know what's going to happen now, right? Lemon skipped, unaware that their actions had not only caused great happiness for them, but had also brought about a union that had never been seen before, between the fourth most powerful Transcendental of the underworld, with one of the two most powerful celestial dragons in history. What awaited them in the future when the truth was revealed? That Grafia Lucifuge, the fourth most powerful Transcendental, had become pregnant by one of the two most powerful celestial dragons in history, by one who did not belong to this world. Chapter 9. Issei slowly opened his eyes, seeing the wooden ceiling he had seen at least every day. But unlike those days when he woke up in his bed alone, now he wasn't, because of the silver-haired girl sleeping on his chest with a weak smile. Issei, who would have thought that in this world I would end up having my first time with Grafia? He thought as he gently caressed the former maid's cheek, something that shouldn't have happened if he was in his original world. Ddraig, I assure you that no one would have thought it. In fact, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't have had Hex. Issei, yes, as you say, but now that I did this with Grafia, I will take her with me when I discover how to go back to my world. Ddraig, although you'd have a lot of explaining to do when that time comes. Issei, I know, he replied before turning his gaze back to Grafia, who was watching him with a weak smile. Something that made one appear on his face as well, so he caressed her cheek before saying, Issei, did I wake you up? Grafia, I actually woke up before you did. Issei, I see. Grafia, regarding what you said about Rias. Grafia, I know, I'll tell her that we'll go see her this afternoon. Issei just gave a sigh upon hearing that, which Grafia understood, so she just gave Issei a kiss to calm him from his worries. Something that Issei responded to instantly, where the kiss went from a calm one to a rather passionate one. But while they were both focused on enjoying themselves, something else was happening inside Lilith Castle. Lilith, oh, so Issei made another move again. Venelana, it seems so. This time he struck a blow against the Nordic faction. It seems he was looking for some way to break the limiter you put on Crom Crutch. I spoke while calmly looking at the people kneeling in front of them, who did not make any kind of movement. Misla, he didn't get what he wanted, but he stole valuable information for the entire underworld. Really unfortunate. Lilith, it certainly is so. If Issei obtained that information, I can only think that you are a failure as the main leader of your faction. Don't you think the same, Vidar? As soon as she mentioned the name of Odin's son, he looked up, revealing his battered face. One that Odin's son should not have, and he simply could not say otherwise, not in front of these women. Vidar, I regret that my actions gave Issei the advantage. Lilith, naturally if not, I would kill you myself as I did with Odin. Venelana, this is the first time you have disappointed us like this, Vidar. That is why we will let this offense go. Misla, but if there is another mistake like this, the Nordic faction will need another main god, understood? They said without showing any respect for one of the gods of Asgard, who just lowered his head accepting everything. Something that a god would not be willing to do if it were not necessary, but in front of these three, it was the only thing he could do. Vidar, I understand. Thank you for your mercy. Lilith, you may go. I hope that next time you come back, you bring good news, otherwise. Vidar, I understand. With those words he left with the Valkyries who accompanied him, at the same time that someone entered the bedroom. She only sighed a little when she saw Vidar's face, who simply did not dare to look at the girl who passed by him, who only knelt in front of the three women. Valeria, did you call me mother? Lilith, that's right, Valeria. I called you because all the reports you've sent about the bearer of Ddraig have been a little disappointing. They all repeated the same thing. Finding Ddraig was in vain, right? Valeria, that's right, mother. Until now, we have searched the most remote places in the underworld, as well as all the factions, but to this day we have not found any trace of him. Lilith, I understand. Please come closer. Valeria, yes. She replied before getting up from her place and walking to her mother, where as soon as she arrived she knelt on one leg. Where without warning Lilith took her by the chin, something that forced the girl to look directly at her face. Lilith, Valeria, of all the children I've had in these years, you have stood out the most. Rise turned out to be garbage with her obsession with Cerzex. As for Valeria, his actions to surprise me only make me more disappointed in him. But you are the one who has brought the most results. And you are the one who comes closest to meeting my expectations. Valeria. Lilith, but the only thing you've disappointed me in is having that little romance with Dilio. Lilith's words were serious. Even if she seemed to congratulate her, she knew that those were just empty words, but when she spoke of the angel, Valeria's eyes trembled for a moment. Lilith, if it weren't for that, you would have given birth to a transcendental. It's a shame what happened later with Dilio. Valeria, I'm sorry. Lilith, I know, but now we have another mission for you besides finding the Ddraig bearer. Venelana, we want you to make sure that Grafia returns to us. Valeria, Grafia? I thought Cerzex would take care of that. Misla, do you think Grafia will agree to come back if he asks her? It's clear that she will never do it. They said while the silver-haired girl just lowered her head. Just by doing that the three knew that she accepted what they entrusted to her. Lilith, make Grafia come back. Don't disappoint me. Valeria, yes, mother. With that answer she left, leaving the three demons alone, who did not have good intentions. And just at the moment that Valeria left the three of them alone, both demons looked at Lilith, who remained somewhat thoughtful. Venelana, it seems that your daughter's loyalty is diminishing day by day. Misla, I wouldn't be surprised if she already knew the identity and whereabouts of Ddraig's wielder, and if she avoids saying anything about it, it's because she believes that Ddraig's wielder. Lilith, he can defeat us as of today. Only Issei represents a great threat to us. His way of increasing his strength is dangerous. If we leave him alone, he will eventually surpass the three of us. Neither of them contradicted what Lilith had said. Both of them knew that Issei had abnormal growth. They had witnessed it since the moment he joined Rias 1.5 years ago. Misla, if it weren't for him rejecting our offer, we would be in this bed having sex with him right now. Venelana, their genes mixed with ours could have created 3 powerful transcendentals, which could have surpassed us. Lilith, we offered him something that all the demons of the underworld would want, and killed to have. Too bad he didn't seem to like the idea. Misla, although his betrayal did surprise me. Lilith, that's right, even if he didn't like the proposal, betraying us was a bit exaggerated. Venelana, maybe we overlooked some facts at that time. She said, remembering that after her proposal, Issei took a week to give his answer, which was a betrayal towards them and the girls who loved him. Lilith, whatever the reason is that led Issei to betray us, something he would never have considered, not by himself. Venelana, someone is pulling the strings in their favor in all of this. Issei betraying us all was no coincidence, as was Valeria's disloyalty. Misla, whoever it is seems to be really determined to start a war against us. She said with a sinister smile that the other two imitated. After all, Issei's betrayal didn't bother them. On the contrary, they found it even funnier that way. Meanwhile, in the cabin, Issei came out of the bathroom with his pants on while drying his hair with a towel. Issei, Ddraig, are the settings ready? Ddraig, yes, I recharged the collar's energy, but keep in mind that it needs maintenance, and no one knows how to do it. Issei, how long? Ddraig, possibly 3 months, maybe less. It all depends on the necklace. It took a lot of damage the moment you forcefully used Balance Breaker that day. 3 months, that was the time Issei had left before the collar became useless from the damage. It was still a prototype, so he had to be careful not to reveal himself to the wrong beings. Issei, 3 months, in that case I'll take advantage of that time. With that thought, he headed to the cabin's dining room, watching as Grafia was reheating all of the food from the night before, wearing only her white panties along with a white shirt that only had one button covering her breasts. Issei, she really is beautiful, he thought before walking and hugging her from behind, surprising her a little, something that only lasted for a moment before turning her face. Grafia, breakfast will be ready in a few minutes. Anada. Issei just smiled when he heard what Grafia had called him, so before she turned her face he kissed her. Something where Grafia reciprocated without a single doubt, instantly noticing how the brunette's hands touched her. Grafia, a fufu, I wouldn't mind if we do it again, but we have to go serious. Issei, I know you still promised me that you would be mine every night, so I'm in no hurry. Grafia just blushed before giving a loving smile to Issei, who smiled back. Ddraig, partner, I don't want to interrupt your moment with your beloved, but we have something to discuss with her. Issei, argument? What do you mean by that? Ddraig, partner, since we came to this world there is something that has been worrying me. Draig's tone of voice surprised Issei a little, something Grafia saw as she left the food ready. Grafia, is something wrong? Issei, well, Ddraig wants to talk to you. Grafia, with me? Ddraig, that's right, it's the first time we're talking, and as you know I'm not the Ddraig you know in those stories. Grafia, yes I know, you must still be strong if you are sealed in a skred gear. Ddraig, right, what I wanted to ask you is something simple. Grafia, as long as I know the answer, I'll tell you without any problem. Issei just stayed out of the conversation. After all, it was the first time that Ddraig talked to someone other than him in this way, and the fact that he was so serious gave him the impression that it was something really important. Ddraig, in that case tell me, what is the power level of this world? Grafia showed her surprise like the brown-haired boy upon hearing Ddraig's question, who remained silent waiting for Grafia, who simply looked in surprise at the boy's wrist. Issei, I had forgotten, this world has a different level of power than ours. Ddraig, there are levels of power in our world, where Great Red is the maximum existence. But here he was already defeated by me. Based on and after seeing some levels of power, I can say that there is a big difference between both. She was right, the levels shown in the world were different from those in their world, so both of them just kept quiet waiting for the demonist's response. Grafia, if what they say is true, and the highest requirement of their world is the former Great Red, then both of them have been blind in this world. If you compare both worlds with that, the answer is simple. Ddraig, which one is it? Grafia, your world is the weakest compared to mine, and the reason is very simple. My power is at the level of the god of destruction Shiva, a god that I killed myself during our confrontation a few years ago. Both dragons were in shock, They had never thought that the Graphia of this world was actually more powerful than the most powerful Hindu god, who, as had been mentioned, was defeated by Graphia herself, who looked at the brown-haired boy with some seriousness. Graphia Issei, in this world there is a list of the most powerful beings, and no god is part of it. Issei, no god? Graphia, currently each mythology has a main god, who is obedient to the monarch, not by will but by fear. Ddraig, who is this monarch? Graphia, Lucifer's widow, Lilith, the mother of all demons, who tops the list of all the most powerful beings. They simply couldn't hide their surprise. In their world the demon no longer existed. Although given the attacks it was believed that perhaps she was alive, but in this world she was the one who ruled each mythology without problems. Issei, is Lilith still alive? Graphia, that's right, she is currently the most powerful of the transcendentals that exist after her come Venelana Baal and Misla Baal, women who are feared by all, even gods do not dare to face them. Ddraig, are they that scary? If your power makes you superior to God Shiva, then those three. Graphia, yes, they are more powerful than me. In the ranking I barely occupy 4th place, then Cerzex occupies 5th, Valeria occupies 6th, Ajuka occupies 7th, Rise occupies 8th. Seraphal was in 9th, but that changed and now it is occupied by Varian. The 10th is Belbrith. Issei, are they all transcendental? Graphia, yes, as for the last 3 spots, they are occupied by Dyuzer, Ryagun and Sarog, although he entered the ranking a few years ago after the defeat of Seraphal. He didn't know how to react, if all the most powerful gods of his world weren't part of this list. How much power did those 13 possess? He didn't understand. He thought that with his Dabalos dragon he would be at the level of the strong, or so he thought before hearing that. Issei, this is bad. Ddraig, it is. We were swimming in dangerous waters without knowing it, if we had encountered any transcendentals of this world. Issei, maybe we would have died. I don't control my Dabalos perfectly. Even if I did it wouldn't be strong enough to. For the first time in a long time the feeling of weakness returned. He hadn't felt it since he lost in the raiding game against Razor. Graphia, how powerful are you in your world? Ddraig, where we come from, Issei is capable of facing the gods and defeated some gods, but within this world he might not be able to defeat any. Graphia just looked at her lover in surprise, who had a very worried face. So she pondered for a few seconds before thinking of something, so she said while just lovingly holding her hand. Graphia, Issei, show me your strongest state. Issei, why? Graphia, please do it, then I will know how strong you are in this world. Issei was slightly surprised, but if showing all his power allowed him to know how strong he would be, then there was no reason to do it. So they both left the cabin, and as soon as they were a little far away Issei prepared himself with Ddraig. Issei, this is the first time I'll use the Dabalos dragon in that world. Ddraig, true, even if Ophis isn't around I'm sure you'll be able to use the armor. Issei, well, in that case let's begin. Sighing, he prepared to finally use the Dragon Dabalos, but he didn't do so when he saw Graphia's surprise, who quickly turned towards where the cabin was. Graphia, hide you quickly. As soon as she heard that, she retreated while hiding behind a tree, leaving Graphia alone, who looked towards the cabin seriously. Where the door opened, revealing the silver-haired girl as she looked at her seriously. Graphia, Valeria. Valeria, Graphia. They both said, looking at each other with great or exaggerated hostility, something that surprised the brown-haired girl, who didn't make any unnecessary movements. Graphia, what are you doing here? Did Lilith Sama send you? Valeria, correct, she asked me to take you back with me. You still have to give up a child, one that they like, they will choose one. Graphia, I'm not going back, tell that to Lilith Issei. No, tell Lilith that I have no intention of returning, and that from today on I have nothing to do with the underworld. Valeria, you know she doesn't take no for an answer. If you refuse, she will come for you in person, and you know it. Graphia hardened her gaze at what Valeria said. She knew well that the demon was not going to give up. Not even if she could give birth to a child, which would be 100% a transcendental, or so she thought before remembering everything. Graphia, it doesn't matter. Because even if she comes, it won't change the fact that I'm no longer a virgin and I no longer have 100% of giving birth to a transcendental. Valeria, what, you what? Graphia, as you hear it, I am no longer the virgin that she thinks I am like you did in the past. I gave my virginity to the man I love. Valeria just looked at that with concern, so she sighed the moment she looked where Issei was, something that surprised Graphia, who was going to move to defend him. Valeria, in that case you will like what I will tell you. Graphia, no, both of you will like to hear it. Issei simply listened in surprise to more of Valeria's words, even the former maid did. So without waiting any longer, Valeria smiled, before saying fearlessly, Valeria, don't worry, I won't hurt you. If I try, Graphia will surely kill me, although, to be honest, you're only useful to me when you're alive, since you're not from this world, right? No one expected those words. An unexpected event had occurred, and it seemed that the big question upon Issei's arrival in that alternate world was soon going to be answered. Chapter 10. Both Issei and Graphia were more surprised than ever, hearing Valeria say that it was unexpected for the duo who didn't know how to react to that, something Valeria understood. So she took a couple of steps, putting Graphia on guard as she increased her aura. Calm down, I'm not here to fight, but to talk, Valeria said calmly. Why should I believe you? Graphia said cautiously as she thought of a way to get Issei out of there. Because I know that the boy has been hiding here for a long time, but I never told Mother. Lilith's daughter said immediately. If I had told her something, we wouldn't be having the current conversation. Her response only made the duo even more surprised as they didn't know how to react. But Issei knew that there was no point in hiding anymore if she already knew he was hiding there. So he sighed before stepping out from behind the tree, catching the attention of both demons. Issei, you have to, the Lucifuge shouted, more than worried. Calm down, if what Valeria says is true, then I'll be more useful to her alive than dead, he said as he stood next to the former maid. So I ask you, are you responsible for me coming into this world? Her question brought a smile to Valeria's face, who simply turned around to enter the cabin again. If we're going to talk about that, we'd better go inside, he said calmly before entering, leaving the couple outside for a few moments. Issei? Graphia asked doubtfully to the brunette, who agreed in response. It's okay, I can at least say that he doesn't want to hurt us, Issei said as he followed Valerie. Something that Graphia imitated by entering the cabin, watching as Valerie was going to sit in one of the armchairs. The story is a bit long, so you better sit down, Valerie said calmly as they both sat down on the opposite armchair. Well, what do you want to know first? Why am I here? Issei said without even waiting, something that Valeria knew perfectly well. Very well, if you want to know that I will tell you. The story is long, so I will take my time, Valeria said calmly. Something that made both of them serious, which no longer worried Valeria, who gave a brief sigh as she remembered those days. So that you understand the reason, I will tell you everything that happened before, Valeria said as she made herself comfortable on the couch. As you well know, Issei, everything that has happened in your world has not yet happened or is not destined to happen. Yes, I know, Issei answered as his gaze discreetly went to Graphia. The nature of this world is very different from mine. That's right, the reason for this is because of Ddraig, the dragon of domination, Valeria said, surprising Issei as well as Ddraig. His power transcended to levels never seen before, which made or rather forced all the mythologies to unite and destroy him. But Draig's power was too great, to the point that it came to influence the world in more than one way, and that began after the war to seal Ddraig, where even the Infinity Dragon fell. Huh! Ophis is dead inside this world? Issei asked in surprise while Valeria agreed. Even with all the power gathered from the mythologies, they couldn't stop Ddraig's full power, even when they tried to seal him inside the first prototype of the apocalypse-boosted gear. Ddraig escaped, Valeria said as she created an illusion with her magic. It was at that moment that the hopes of finally stopping Ddraig disappeared. It wasn't until the best gods gathered to create the second as well as the last version of the apocalypse-boosted gear which caused the hopes to return. His words were represented in the illusion, which showed the boosted gear gauntlet, with different types of modifications as well as a very scary appearance, one that made him nervous just by looking at it. Naturally, they started the second assault against Ddraig, who upon seeing the apocalypse-boosted gear knew instantly that it could stop him, or rather contain him, Valeria said as she showed the fight between the factions and Ddraig. So he attacked with all his power. That's why Samuel's poison was used, which was enough to weaken him but not kill him. Even Samuel's poison wasn't enough? Issei asked, to which Valeria agreed. Correct, Ddraig resisted until the end. Even the pressure of all the mythologies did not stop him, so to signal him Ophis entered the battle, and the defeated Great Red helped in that by offering his body and his power to further strengthen the apocalypse-boosted gear. The fight was violent and bloody. But in the middle of the bloody combat, the only opportunity to seal Ddraig once and for all appeared, Valeria said while the image showed how Ddraig was sealed. Many things were used to seal it, Issei said, to which Valeria agreed. That's right, thousands of treasures from all mythologies were used to seal him. That way it was possible to finally stop him, Valeria said seriously as she made the image disappear. But it was this battle that brought about endless changes. Ddraig's power was so great that it influenced the entire world. Saying that, Issei finally seemed to see the truth behind everything, so he looked at Valeria in surprise. Just by seeing that, she knew that Issei understood why the standards of power were so different. If Ddraig's power was so great as to influence the nature and power of the world, it means that, Issei said in surprise, to which Valeria agreed. It grew. You may not have noticed it because of the short time you've been here, but in Coast City and in the world, the strength of a human without them knowing or even noticing increased. To avoid an abnormal growth among them, a seal was used powerful enough to prevent all that power from growing, which this day has worked in some way, Valeria said before seeing Graphia. So if this managed to influence humans, it means that it also affected supernatural beings, Issei said, to which Valeria agreed. All mythologies began to notice that the power of the majority was increasing. Even those gods who were weak surpassed those who were stronger, who in turn also grew in strength, said the daughter of Lilith while Graphia looked seriously at the boy. This increase in strength caused the balance in the world to change. Everyone knew the reason why everyone's power and magic increased, Graphia said as she returned her gaze to the table. So they tried to take the? Issei asked doubtfully. No one had the courage to take the apocalypse-boosted gear, since they were all terrified of that power. And it was for that reason that they looked for something that gave the same influence, but it was in a certain sense safe to use, Valeria said while looking at the brown-haired boy before saying with a serious tone. And those things are Ddraig's scales. As soon as he said it, Issei was surprised, which was no different for Ddraig who, like Issei, had remained silent and listening. His scales? Issei asked doubtfully while Valeria agreed. His scales were the only thing he left behind. Things like a tooth, a claw, or even his blood were lost. He only left a quantity of 62 scales that he lost in the battle before being sealed, Valeria said while looking at Issei. Then a fight for the 62 scales must have started, I suppose, Issei said, at which Valeria laughed. I admit that it would have been better, but no, although there were many who wanted to take advantage of the influence and power of the scales, there were even more who feared Ddraig's power, like the effects that he could be capable of having on them, Valeria said, to which Graphia said. That's why it was decided to destroy every remaining scale regardless of whether they could increase their power. Even if they didn't agree, the mythologies gave up and accepted, Graphia said as she looked at her hand with guilt. Then the 62 scales, Issei said before noticing Graphia's expression as well as Valeria's, noticing some hint of guilt. Not all of them were destroyed, right? Issei said, to which they let out a slight sigh. That's right, the first 30 were, and as for the remaining 32, Lilith took possession of them and then hid them, Graphia said, to which Issei understood why the power of the demons was quickly triggered. My mother created a room in which she gathered the remaining 32 scales, and using various methods she created what is known today as the New Eden, a place where just by sleeping you are able to increase your power. It was through that place that Lilith, along with Venelana and Nisla, were greatly affected in their powers, Valeria said regretfully. Rias and Serog's mother? Issei said in surprise, to which Graphia said. The two of them helped gather as well as hide the 32 scales. That is why Lilith Sama let them join her inside the New Eden. That is why they are so strong, and why the demons are the most powerful faction, Graphia said, leaving Issei surprised, or rather in shock. Everything made sense at that moment. he finally understood why there were so many transcendentals and beings of great power in this world. As well as why they feared the demons. If they used the new Eden to increase their power, it was only natural for them to rise in position to be one of the factions, or rather, the only strongest faction. So the power levels in my world are not the same as in this one. They couldn't even be called equal due to Ddraig's influence, Issei said in surprise, to which Valeria laughed lightly. If we compare them, I can safely say that your world would hold out against us for quite a while, but if any of the Transcendentals or Lilith, Venelana or Misla attack, everyone can consider themselves dead, Valeria said seriously as she watched Issei's face show great concern. Of course, that's if we skip the only factor that they fear and at the same time desire. What do you fear and desire? What would that be? Issei asked doubtfully. What they fear and desire is you, Issei. There is nothing more valuable to them. You are the forbidden apple of Eden. As soon as Valeria said that, Issei was as surprised as possible, so much so that he turned to look at Grafia, who didn't seem surprised by that. I don't understand. What is so special about me that they want me to like that? Issei instantly said with doubt. The answer is too simple, and I'm surprised you don't know it, Valeria said with amusement before pointing at him calmly. They want you for the truly abnormal way in which you're getting stronger, given that even you should have noticed it a long time ago, from how you started out as a demon, the weakest, to being one of the strongest, capable of facing the gods after only a year and a half of having started. His words surprised Issei, since it was something he couldn't help but notice, the abnormal way of strengthening his power to the point where he can fight against the gods and that he hasn't even reached his true limit. I see, that's why they fear me, but that doesn't explain why they want me, Issei said with doubt, to which Valeria responded. Issei, what happens when you fill a glass with water that has already reached its limit? Valeria asked the brown-haired boy who only limited himself to answering. Well, the water can't be contained anymore, so it will come out every time you try to put more in, Issei answered before noticing the reason behind that question. That's not possible. That's right, they are close to their limit. They haven't reached it yet, of course, but they feel that they are close to it. That is why in these 40 years they have not entered the new Eden again, since if they do they fear that the cup that represents their power will spill, leaving them stagnant, Valeria said while Issei was a little surprised. I see, but that doesn't answer my, Issei said before understanding it. It seems that you have already understood them, Valeria said with amusement. They are reaching their limit, you with an abnormal talent in strengthening yourself. If those 3 demons give birth to a child with such an abnormal father, how monstrous will the children be? Now she understood. If they managed to give birth to 3 children of a category more powerful than the transcendental, things would remain the same. The present and future of the demons would be more than assured. Even if they reached the limits of their powers, their offspring would take control, so they could and would have the freedom to do everything. So the reason I'm here is because they want me to, Issei said before being interrupted in an instant by Valeria. You're wrong, Issei. You're not here for that reason, Valeria said as her hands took the apple that was on the coffee table. Huh! But I thought that, Issei said with the same confusion. I never said it was exactly you they wanted, Valeria said as she cut the apple with her power, leaving the 2 slices on the table. The Issei of this world, Issei said, to which Valeria agreed. That's right, the Issei they want is the one they know. You're not even on their radar since they don't know exactly about your existence, Valeria said at something quite normal for her while she was looking at Grafia's reactions. Right now, the ones who know of your existence as well as that of your world are only 2. Me and Ajuka are the only ones who know of your existence. Does Ajuka-sama know this too? Issei said with surprise. He was the one who discovered them for some reason. The news of a world that, unlike ours, is not ruled by Lilith is too tempting, Valeria said with a smile. He knew that your world was an outlet for Lilith's control and torment. A way out? Then Issei said in surprise. That's right, Ajuka planned to kill the one who was in your world, to usurp his place and live his life. When he told me that, I planned the same, but surprised I don't exist in that world, Valeria said with a disappointed tone. But even if I didn't exist, I could live hidden there. But the moment we tried to cross, a slight problem happened. Slight problem? Issei asked doubtfully. The day we tried to leave, something happened that Ajuka called dimensional time fracture, Valeria said while Issei was confused upon hearing it. Dimensional time fracture? Issei asked doubtfully. Yes, that interrupted our arrival to your world, Issei, Valeria said, to which Issei was surprised. Wait a moment, Ddraig said, finally entering the conversation. If that space-time fracture you mentioned didn't allow them to cross to our world, it means that it was the same fracture that brought us to the alternate world. Basically, Valeria said calmly. But how? Issei said with doubt. Causality can be quite scary, Valeria said while just sighing in slight disappointment. Coincidences? Issei asked. What happened was a triple event, something that not even a Juka could predict. The portal that we were planning to use had the objective of connecting both worlds through the dimensional gap, Valeria said, looking into space, as if in her mind she was remembering everything that had happened. I understand, but what does it have to do with us? Issei assumed said that he and Ddraig were one of those 3 events that prevented Valeria and Ajuka's trip. Everything, Issei, just every part of what went wrong is because of you, Valeria said, a little annoyed. Or well, almost the majority. The majority? Issei, confused, said. Why do we have almost all the blame? I think your level of guilt is 12%, Valeria said to the brown-haired boy who raised an offended eyebrow. It's only 12%, and you blame us for being the biggest culprits? Issei said, somewhat offended. Correct, Valeria said calmly. You better explain it with a little more detail, Issei said as the woman created another magic circle. Look, when we opened the portal to cross over to your world, another portal appeared in front of ours, Valeria said as 2 circles appeared in the image. Portal A is yours, Issei, and B is ours. My portal? Issei, confused, said. I don't remember us going to the dimensional gap when we came to. I see you understood, Valeria said to the brown-haired boy. Hades, the sphere that the Grim Reaper threw at us, transported us to the breach, Issei said while Valeria agreed. At the place where I sent you there was a seal prepared by Hades, this with the sole objective of stopping you, Issei, Valeria said while seeing the circles in the image. Everything was fast enough to be able to react in time. He said while playing what happened in the image, where almost at the same time 2 circles appeared. Likewise 3 points, 1 green, 1 gray and 1 red. The red dot appeared through Portal A, and the green one along with the gray one through Portal B, both of which showed movement through the portal, trying to cross it just like the red dot. But at the same time, out of nowhere, a crimson burst appeared, one coming from Portal B, causing the green and gray dots to return to the other lake, bringing the red dot with them. That's the simple representation of what happened, Valeria said while Issei was slightly confused. I managed to partially understand what you showed me, Issei said as he looked at the silver-haired girl. If I understood correctly, those 3 events you are referring to were events that happened at exactly the same time. Correct, Valeria said. In that case, when Hades sent me to the dimensional gap to signal me, it was exactly at the moment that you decided to cross it, Issei said while Valeria agreed. Those were the first 2 events, I see that without problems, but the third. You don't know what it is, right? Valeria asked Issei, who shook his head. The third one was a leak of Ddraig's aura, but not yours, but ours. As soon as he said that, Ddraig tensed inside the boosted gear, remembering well a pair of emerald eyes that analyzed his being. It had happened so fast that he ended up taking it as a simple rambling of his. So, it wasn't a hallucination what I saw that day, Ddraig said with the biggest surprise of his life. The pair of eyes that were watching me. Interesting, so our Ddraig sensed the presence of his Ddraig, Valeria said as she pondered. Did you see our Ddraig face to face? Yes, I remember perfectly that at that moment a pair of emerald eyes appeared in front of me for at least 2 seconds, and during that time I felt him analyzing me, Ddraig said with some fear. If they saw each other face to face, it means that the greatest exponent to end up here was the intervention of our Ddraig, Valeria said while Issei understood the situation. Damn lizard. Then the alternate Ddraig, sensing through his portal a being like him, Issei said while Valeria said. He wanted to meet him, but the portal they came through was for us to leave. It wasn't designed for anyone to enter, Valeria said while sighing. By going against their target the portal collapsed. That way they didn't go to where Ddraig was sealed, but instead they ended up in Ko by chance. In that case, if we open the portal through which they wanted to leave, Issei said, to which Valeria quickly denied. Forget it, the opportunity to open it won't appear until several months later, or it could even be years, Valeria said, confusing Issei. The reason is because my mother, Lilith, placed a sign on the dimensional gap that prevents one from entering that place, and if you force yourself to enter she will know about it. We tried that day because Mother briefly entered the New Eden, and when she left she noticed that someone forced the seal. She doesn't suspect anyone when she heard that the Celestial Dragon Ddraig appeared inside Coast City. Then the signal, Issei said with a bit of frustration. It was reinforced. Currently Ajuka is looking for a way to enter without having to force the seal, something that according to him, will not be possible until he figures out what types of seals he used, Valeria said while her eyes looked at Issei, who let out a heavy sigh as he leaned back in his spot. Certainly the idea of being able to leave him happy, but with what followed that happiness disappeared when he knew he would have to wait. I see, in that case let's make a deal, Valeria, Issei said, catching the attention of the demon as well as Graphia's. A deal? Valeria asked, to which Issei agreed. What kind of deal are we talking about? It's risky, but if we succeed, both you and the Akuja of this world will be able to travel to my world, Issei said as he took Graphia's hand, who was surprised to feel it. My goal is to return, now with Graphia accompanying me, and if you accept my deal I will be able to advocate for you within my world. Oh, that sounds interesting, Valeria said with a smile. Tell me, kid, what kind of deal is it? First, I want you to lie about what happened here to Lilith, as well as the entire issue related to the Celestial Dragon Ddraig of this world. Second, I want you and Ajuka without objection to ensure my safety if any transcendental demon tries something against me, Issei said, surprising the duo of demons who continued listening. They will be on guard against Graphia without a doubt, but not against you. I also want all the possible information about this world, what things are the same as mine and what are not. Lastly, I want that in addition to Graphia, I want you as Ajuka to train me to reach a new phase of power as well as help better control the one I have. You're asking for a lot, Valeria said with some seriousness while looking at her hands. And what do we earn? Besides the offer of staying in your world? I will directly attack the seal that is over the dimensional gap, Issei said, completely surprising the duo of demons. You need to know what seal was used on the gap. Analyzing it will take you a long time, but if I attack the seal with my maximum power you will be able to know what seal it is and how to counter it. A tempting proposal, but as soon as you do that, Mother, Valeria said, at which Issei spoke again. She will surely appear to stop my attack. However, even if she manages to escape, she will change the signal. Are you going to say that? Issei said while Valeria agreed. To prevent that, I will cover the seal with Ddraig's flames, which will not stop burning until the flames have consumed everything. For what purpose? With the flames, it will only be a matter of time before the seal is destroyed, and it is not the Ddraig of our world, so Mother will be able to extinguish them, Valeria said with the same seriousness, while Issei said calmly. But she doesn't know that. She'll think they're the flames of the alternate Ddraig, so I doubt she'll try anything knowing it could be dangerous, Issei said with a serious look. Also, with covering I meant forming a barrier over the seal. Knowing the seal and Lilith not being able to change it, Akuka will be able to find a way to get through it, and using the power of the flames we will camouflage the escape when attacking the signal. Issei's words left both Valeria and Graphia silent. This idea was completely suicidal. So much so that there were endless things that were going or could go wrong. However, it was the best opportunity to advance to that goal that everyone wanted, to leave the current dimension. Although it seems like a bad plan, it's also an opportunity. I'll talk to Ajuka about it in a few days. If he accepts, he should definitely consider that a deal. But don't forget that we're the ones they'll chase after if they find out about us, Valeria said as she looked at Graphia. All of us would be chased. If that happens, I will fight using all my strength, even if it means exposing myself in front of everyone, Issei said as he looked at Valeria, who nodded slightly. Very well, for the moment I will lie to Mother about the situation. I will tell her that Graphia changed location and is now inside of unknown whereabouts. That will suffice for now, Valeria said as she stood up. That both Ajuka and I must train you about must wait for now. Sounds good to me, Issei said as Valeria walked to the door. One more thing. Issei's words stopped the demon for a moment as she turned around, looking at the brunette on the couch seriously. No cheating. I won't be strong enough to face the Underworld Trinity, but I can be able to fight and even defeat the rest, as well as possibly kill several if I put my mind to it, Issei said seriously as he slowly turned around, showing that his eyes were now shining in an emerald hue. So never incite the dragon's wrath or the consequences will be devastating. Is it a threat? Valeria asked seriously. A warning. I haven't reached my full potential yet, Issei said without a bit of fear. But if I do, nothing can stop me. Valeria just laughed lightly upon hearing it. That was because a memory came to her mind as soon as she turned towards the door. In this one, a brown-haired boy said the same thing, only the boy hugged a fearful Rias, who had destroyed all the things in the place, telling her that he would protect her at the cost of his life, because a dragon would not allow what was most precious to him to be hurt by someone else. I guess they both look alike in that aspect, Valeria said as she summarized her path, confusing Issei slightly. Both dragons are willing to do anything even if they die in the end. They will fulfill everything they have promised. They are honestly the most annoying race that exists. With those words, he walked out the door at the same time as he went through a magic circle, leaving the duo alone again. The duo remained silent for a couple of seconds, during which Issei didn't let go of Graphia's hand as he felt her squeeze it, being quite fearful. Something that Issei understood, since Graphia had suffered too much, but with him here she had learned to see a new perspective on life. One that could disappear with the plan that had just been formed by him. He understood all his nervousness as well as the fear of losing him forever. I won't do anything reckless, Issei said as his left hand grabbed Graphia's chin, forcing her to look at him. I'll do whatever it takes to return to my world, to your new home. As long as I manage to return and you're by my side, the cost doesn't matter. It's too dangerous even with my protection. You're probably in great danger, Graphia said fearfully. I've always been in danger, that's nothing new to me. I've accomplished many things that many couldn't do, which makes me unique in a way, so I won't die easily, Issei said as he kissed Graphia. And if you're by my side, I have nothing to fear. I can still become strong, so in the end I'll be the one who ends up protecting you. If you become stronger, I will follow you without fail. My life is yours, you possess my soul. This Graphia was born thanks to you and will die by your side when you do, Graphia said as she hugged Issei tightly. No matter what you come in the future, I will be by your side without fail. Hearing that, Issei just hugged her back as he looked at the door. There was no doubt that the outside world in this world was dangerous. If he wanted to go back home, he had to be stronger than he was currently. His strength could undoubtedly compete against other devils. Even Transcendentals would be defeated if he was serious. But before that, the first thing he had to get was information, and what Valeria provided was useful. Still, he still had many other questions, which would only be answered if he spoke to the right demon. The same demon that was inside the club room, where he had now come accompanied by Graphia. She was no longer wearing her maid clothes, but had a slightly more normal outfit, indicating that she no longer had any attachment to her past but was instead focusing on her future. Are you ready? Graphia asked Issei, who was now using Shiva Tatsuya's appearance. Yes, I am, Issei said as he put on his hood. Let's do it. Only she and the others have the answers I need. With those words, Graphia knocked a couple of times on the door that led to the club room, from where a quiet voice could be heard in response. One that allowed them to enter. So without a second more of waiting, Graphia calmly opened the door, letting the brunette meet again with that group that Issei loved more than anything, just like Graphia, which accompanied him into the room, where the entire group observed him, analyzing every aspect of him even if he had the mask on, which let none of those present see how his eyes softened when he saw all the girls there. It's a pleasure, Issei said while bowing to the group present. My name is Shiva Tatsuya, also called the Crimson Demon. I'm glad to finally meet you, Gremory Group.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.